Good evening, everybody. This is Mahdeen and Philo. We're a little bit late off schedule, I think. We were just in the back room, just preparing everything. We're going to be continuing our long series on the Hijab, Muhammad Hijab versus not Hamza versus Hamza Tzortis, Muhammad Hijab and Hamza Tzortis versus Aaron Fraser, I think his name is, and Mark Oppenheimer. Is that correct, Philo?
Yes, exactly, Madan. And Madan, hello to you. Hello to everybody. How's everybody doing? And apologies, sincere apologies. We got late. We scheduled it for, I think, we're probably 15 minutes late or so. So I hope everybody's doing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking over you. Carry on, finish off.
No. Go ahead, Madan, please.
No, I was just gonna say we did schedule this a little bit late, and as such, maybe our however little fan base we have so far, they've not caught on to it. As you can see, there's not a lot of people watching right now, but
Right.
hopefully, some people might come on, and if not, tomorrow morning, people will get the stream and they'll watch it then. We are grateful for any viewers, to be honest. So yeah, sorry, Philo, I interrupted you, so you carry on.
No, perfectly fine. I think maybe it's quite possible that people came in and then we didn't join. So if that happened, sincere apologies to those who tried to join in time and then didn't find us streaming. So in any case, we're gonna move ahead and then start our stream. We're gonna, as Martin already said, we're gonna just continue with Muhammad Hijab's opening statement. So let me share the screen. All right. Madan, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So where did we leave?
Millennia. Not only that the Muslims would overtake those empires. The Persian and the Roman, that the fulfilling prophecy capable would compete their bare 77 years. Chapter number 13 of the historical figure, it will collapse. These 5 criteria that I've just mentioned, if you apply these 5 criteria, and I'm willing to be challenged prophecies of the edition I give you, which is find the many contradictions there with all additions, I would put to the table today, there are necessary and sufficient. I'll just mention one evidence. There are necessary and sufficient conditions for a word of God to.
All right, Madan. So I think we left somewhere. We moved a little bit ahead, but then we probably didn't discuss way too much into those. So I just rewinded the video a little bit. So we dealt with the philosophical arguments there, right? Now he has moved. He is trying to make a case for Islam. Basically, Muhammad Hijab is trying to make a case for Islam, and then he's going to provide some evidences, right? And that's what he's going to talk about, right? So anybody who's listening knows where we were in our last stream, and here's where we're going to start off the stream with.
To be conceived as such, the word of God. I would put to the table today that one of the necessary conditions is that this cannot contain any contradictions. We are logicians here, the Quran says if this was from Allah and God, it would have been many contradictions inside of it. لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. The Quran, this is one of the necessary conditions. It's one of the only books to even posit this challenge, religious books, which is find the contradiction within it. Secondly, it's inimitable. Thirdly, it's preserved. We will argue all these points. However, what's the sufficient condition? I give you one argument and one argument only, which is the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I think
I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm on mute, and yes, I was talking on mute. So, Madan, so he has posed at least 2-3 kind of evidences, right? You heard those, right? Inimatability is one, right? And then those are the ones. The prophecies he's gonna come on to, right? So the there one more thing that Muhammad Hijab brought in was there are no contradictions, and that's a necessary condition, right? What is your take on those things?
Well, the inimitability argument I find really strange. It's always
Right.
been the strangest argument for me. And regarding the inimitability argument, the Quran, based on what it is if hijab, I don't know if he expands later on and explains what that means, but far as I know, he's going to reproduce everything that Hamza Tzortis has said. And Hamza Tzortis says that this is not a subjective criteria, it's an objective criteria. That there are certain grammatical features, linguistic features, properties of the text that are not reproducible by a mere mortal. So a human being cannot reproduce the text using the same sort of rules, language rules, and create another surah like it, a fresh surah with the same sort of grammatical features, right?
Right.
That's apparently the claim. Now, this wasn't, far as I know, this is not articulated in the Quran itself in that way. It's actually a vague criteria in the Quran. It says something like you can't produce a chapter like it. And it doesn't explain that there's an objective criteria. It doesn't explain what the criteria is. So the first criticism would be that we don't know what the actual criteria is. Hamza Tzortis may have engaged with certain Muslim scholars or linguists and found these features or something. And he's saying that this is what it meant. But my first suspicion is, why would this not be highlighted explicitly in the Quran if it was intended?
Right.
As the intended purpose. So people have like a benchmark or a criterion to examine human attempts to produce something like it, but because it didn't fit the criteria, it fails. What we instead see historically, at least I know, that you hear individuals attempting it and Muslims of the time denouncing it as a and you probably know better than I on this, but Muslims denouncing it as not being a proper imitation. It's not the right type. But based on what? Are they using a subjective criteria? Do they just do they think they prefer the Quranic expression better than the non-Quranic expression? Is it the sounds? Is it just because it's not the Quran? Is it like a placebo effect? Right? A placebo effect.
Right.
If it's completely subjective, then of course, somebody who finds the Quran from chapter, the first and the final chapter, the first and final surah,
Right.
they're going to hold that in high regard, and anything else is just incomparable because it's subjective. So
Right.
historical attempts have that problem. The new attempt,
Right.
the new kind of version that Hamza has made, first of all, again, everything that I've said, that it's just a departure from history. There's no specific. It's not. The Quran doesn't say this, but let's assume that it can hold up. Well, what Hamza has to do is produce a paper first and ask linguists around the world to try and imitate it. We don't say a peer review, something like that, because that's what we do with these sort of kind of hypothesis, right?
Right.
Testing, and nobody's done this, right? I don't know anybody who's actually attempted to actually reproduce this in this manner. I would imagine if Hamza's credibility is correct in this regard about this, I would imagine he could just put it through a AI software and show that even
You know one really funny incident. Sorry, am I cutting you? Am I interrupting you in between?
I was talking for long.
Right. So one very funny incident, and it's written in the Hadith literature, and probably Hadith and Tariq literature, the history literature. There used to be one guy named I think I'm trying to remember his Nadir and Ibn Haritha, right? If I remember his name correctly. He used to recite. It is said that he used to imitate the Quran better than what it used to be, but he was ultimately killed later on in one of the conquest of Mecca, basically. Maybe conquest of Mecca or before that. So I fail to remember, but somewhere he was killed by the Muslims, right? And so and there was another person named Musaylima, right? And he was around active, and this is all written in the Hadith literature, right? And the Tariq literature, basically. And that guy was also, he claimed to himself to be prophet, and it is said that he had better poetry. He was much better. So this subjective component of judging a book, right, is pretty pretty obvious, not from outside the Quran and Islamic literature, but from within the literature as well, right? And there's another thing that is pretty interesting, that this inimitability criteria is mentioned in, as far as I remember, it's mentioned in 4 or 5 verses, different verses, and the numbering of surahs is different, right? And I fail to remember exactly what is in one. It's like produce 10 surahs like it. In one, it is produce a Quran like it, and in one, it's produce a surah like it, something like that. So there are 3 or 4 different versions, right? Now imagine your God is all-knowing, right? So he knows if this book is inimitable, you won't give. I mean, only who can give 3 different versions? Only if a man is confused that probably somebody could come and produce a surah like it, then he would increase it to 10 surahs like it, then he would increase it to a Quran, produce a Quran like it, right? Only a person who's doubtful about his own book's inimitability, right? A being who's all-knowing wouldn't have any doubt that nobody can. He would already know, right, that nobody can do it, right? So then he would only say, okay, just do even one surah like it, right? If it were from him, I mean, somebody could argue this seems like a very valid objection to this inimitability problem, right? Because I mean, it's if there is an all-knowing being who's giving this asking you to produce something like this, he should just be giving you one thing, and should give you a very clear instructions on what your even if you try to bring a surah like it, what basis are those surahs gonna be judged on, basically. But you just don't find that kind of information within the Quran, because this was more likely than not was written by people of those times, right? Anyway, sorry I interrupted you in the middle.
No,
Just
that's
wanted
fine.
to mention.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, without a criteria, it seems to be really vague as to what they're asking for. And here's the thing: Hamza's version of it might not be what the Quran intends, and he's got an inconsistency. Therefore, I mean, with what else, the other things he says in other quarters. For example, Hamza makes the argument that we can never really know the sound interpretation of the Quran, precisely because induction keeps changing, or inductive data keeps changing, and therefore what might fit modern times, a particular interpretation of the Quran, might not fit a different period or different era, the past, and so on. It might have meant a different thing, because people can interpret the Quran differently. And this is kind of the point that he kind of makes in order to stave away the idea that science, can never repudiate the Quran because it keeps changing. But he doesn't seem to realize that this creates a panacea, I think is the word, or like a wormhole, or whatever you want to call it, like a Pandora's box of problems for him.
Right.
Yeah, because that means that the Quran itself, first of all, is so versatile that it's not interpretable in any particular period, and you cannot conclusively say that this is what this means, because any sort of statement, any sort of writing, any sort of commentary in the Quran is gained meaning through some sort of reference to the world. And what's that? That's through induction, right?
Right.
But if induction can keep changing, then at no period can we actually get a concrete meaning. Now, that's a more broad criticism against the Hamza's argument, but because of that, narrowly, it also affects the linguistic argument, because that also means, and how does he know that's the criteria? Because it might be a different, today he thinks it's that. Tomorrow it might be something else. He might discover, what about Sabir Ali, who makes the argument that there's numerology, or whatever it's called, can be found in patterns of 9 or number 19 or whatever it was. I can't remember now.
Yeah. There were quite a few guys who did that, and there are still quite a few guys who still keep doing that. the main proponent of that numerology was Rashad Khalifa, right? Yeah, I think you remember that guy from. I think he was originally from Egypt or something like that, and he was killed for that because he was deemed as heretic basically, and
Yeah,
I think in
exactly.
1996 or something like that he was killed basically, and he
That's
did
crazy.
some really funky things. I mean, he even discarded some of the verses or probably some of the words from within the verses just to make his scheme fit basically. So yeah, I mean, you're right about that. It's there is a huge problem. I mean,
Yeah.
you are trying to fit, and you aptly said so, you are trying to fit a 7th century book and trying to interpret in a different way by modern times basically. And so it's a huge problem basically, and trying
Yeah.
to derive like a miraculous nature from those standards of now. If you were to judge, and if that standard were to be set, that were to be set in those times in the 7th century, right, and before 632 AD, basically before the death of the prophet,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. I mean, when Hijab makes this argument, he also supports it with the idea that there have been non-Islamic, non-Muslim scholars and academics who have verified the inimitability of or the linguistic prowess of the Quran, that this is just poetically advanced and it can't be reproduced or something.
Right.
He What he makes the fundamental mistakes he makes there is that he's quote mining perhaps or cherry picking because what's the ratio? How many linguists did he have to go to before he found that one individual one who said this? And when you go into the context and you contextualize it, they're not saying actually that. They're marveling at maybe the beauty. And it's an aesthetic judgment or a beauty judgment. It's not really in line with what Hamza is saying, that there's an objective criteria. It's not as though they looked at the objective criteria and tried to reproduce it and then failed and thought, oh wow, this is not reproducible by man. Rather, they just found the tenor, the color, the tinge, the sounding, the phonetics, the meanings and content of the Quran to be sublime for the time, maybe. And that's a subjective judgment, right? It's nothing to do with.
That is purely subjective, and that is yeah, I mean, all these things are done by humans. I mean, there's how can you make that connection that these things cannot be done by humans? I mean, you can, if these sounds can be made by humans, then any combination of these sounds can be made by humans. I mean, this is the easiest hypothesis that you can work on basically, right? And on top of that, a priori, books are written by humans basically. I mean, if you're making a claim other than that, you need to provide sufficient evidence pretty much. I mean, I was going to go for like humongous evidence, but I'll still say sufficient evidence pretty much, right? And that's something that has not been done. The only
I mean,
only case they try to make, sorry Mohammed, just
no, go ahead.
finish
Go
this.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The only claim they make it because since 1400 years nobody has tried to imitate something like. So first thing is, who's going to judge it? That somebody, even if somebody came up with something, and there have been attempts at doing that. I remember what's his name, Hassan Radwan. He's a prominent British ex-Muslim basically. He has written something like this, and it's on YouTube. There are a couple of guys in India who are very well versed with understanding of the Quran and understanding of the Arabic language. They have written something really beautiful in Arabic, and it sounds subjectively you can say, but it sounds as good as listening to any verse from the Quran, pretty much, or any surah from the Quran, pretty much. The one name that occurs to me is Quran Wala, basically. His name, he used to be called Sachwala. Now he has changed his name to Quran Wala. There's another name from the Arab world himself. There are a couple of guys from Egypt who have done the same thing. There's another guy from Saudi Arabia who has done the same thing. He's an ex-Muslim. So if you're listening to this stream, and if you're wondering where it is done, just type in Google surah like it imitation, and you'll find tons of YouTube videos. You won't even if nobody told you, 90% of the Muslims even won't realize the difference between the original Quran and that. It's that funny. So I mean, I'm when I'm saying this that funny, I'm not talking about those surahs and stuff. I'm just trying to compare those two things that people just don't just shove it off. That oh, okay, this is not, because who's gonna judge basically? If you ask a Muslim whether this really compares to the Quran, their answer is gonna be in no what do you call, no uncertain terms would be no, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
if you ask ex-Muslims who understand, say if you talk to Coptic Christians or somebody from Arabian Peninsula who's not a Muslim, they'll say, oh yes, this is better than the Quran, who have a little bit understanding of the Quran. And like maybe someone like Kert Point, you heard of Kert Point, Mahadan, right? He's a Orientalist who picked the Sana manuscripts and studied almost like 20,000 palimpsests pretty much. His understanding of Arabic is probably better than 99.99% of the Muslim. Then you have what's her name? Patricia Crona. You've
yeah,
heard of her, right? So
historian. Yeah.
yeah, the historian Patricia Crona. Her command on Arabic is probably much better than 99.99. She's a lady who knows 15 languages or more. And sorry, I mean she knows. I mean she passed away, I think, in 2014 or 15, something like that. But she knew almost like 15 languages, something, and her understanding of Arabic was much better. And Quranic Arabic, I'm talking about, not just any other Arabic. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge that that doesn't have a head and tail. Pretty much, I just can't make a head and tail of that challenge. It seems like a childish challenge to me, pretty much. Sorry, Mahadin, I interrupted. So please go ahead.
No, it's all right. It's okay. And this is probably why Hamza Tzortis was forced to create a objective criteria, so-called objective criteria, precisely because the subjective criteria is simply falls prey to that exact criticism that is just subjective, right?
Right.
Based on feelings and emotions, and there's no way to distinguish between what's the right type of no way to distinguish between a human work and godly work, because it's just up to the subject, eye of the beholder, who just determines it as this is more beautiful and this is not. This is ugly. These sort of expressions, and therefore, what Hamza tried to do is make it more falsifiable. Like this is a falsifiable test, which is very strange that we needed Hamza to come along and do that. It doesn't
Right. For post 1400 years, there was nobody, and then we needed somebody to.
Yeah, that itself weakens some of its integrity. But then when you have this sort of falsifiable criteria that Hamza has created, it's just catching dust. Nobody cares about it. Why? Subject it to peer review. Say that this is a hypothesis, saying that this is not reproducible by man. Right? Submit it to a linguistic. I don't know how it works in this arena of linguistics. Submit it to a journal. I challenge you. And guess what? If it goes across many linguists across the academic community, and they all come to the conclusion that this actually can't be reproduced, they cannot use the same symbols, the same linguistic tricks, the same grammatical forms, or whatever you want to call it, and create a new structure, new paragraph, a new sentence, then that would be astounding. I would be shocked. I'll be the first to say, wow, I did not expect that result. And it'll be like the theory of evolution. You have like evolution, biologists all agreeing that evolution works. Evolution is true. Well, it'll be linguists saying, look, indeed, the Quran is objectively not reproducible. Objectively. That would be amazing. But nothing like that has been done. So why doesn't Hamza do that?
Right.
At this moment, nobody can actually attempt this challenge. 99, like you said, 99% of humanity, what are they going to do? How is it impressive to me or anybody else? We can't do it unless you are proficient speaker of Arabic. This is a challenge that is outside of the reach of the rest of humanity, and you just have to take your word for it. And there's no peer-reviewed community to actually do this. And when we say peer review, we don't just mean Muslims, we mean non-Muslims in competition with one another.
Right.
They come to the same conclusion. That's when it's interesting. But that's not what we see. So all I have to say then is to Hamza is, if you really want to convince the world, why are you just raising these in debates? And I think they know this is really weak. This is why they have to prop this these arguments up with prophecies, because the linguistic argument, apparently, which is meant to be the central, main, essential argument of the Quran, right? Because that is what the Quran, because for the Arabs of the time, it was poetry was the main source of communication, and poetry was the thingamajig of the time. For Moses,
Right.
it was something else, a magic. The Quran didn't come with any magic tricks. This was the trick, the linguistic tricks, the linguistic
Right,
acrobatics,
right.
right? So if this is the main, most formidable challenge to humanity, then this is like used the least, I've noticed, by
Yeah, I
people
mean,
like,
I
yeah,
totally agree with your this thing that this should be your primary argument. I mean, you shouldn't even move away from it. You shouldn't even be presenting any other argument. You shouldn't have even a second argument. This
yeah.
should be your one and the only argument, I would say, right? If this were to be so true,
You
then
should be
why
the
do you
yeah,
have to?
it's primary, at the very minimum. I won't go. That's a bit too strong to say one and only, but
Yeah, I
this
mean,
should,
yeah, maybe that's a little too harsh a statement, maybe too strong a statement, maybe.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if it were so true, I mean, I'm just saying that the power of inimitability, if it was so, uh, objectively true,
yeah.
then probably you wouldn't even require anything else. But yeah, maybe okay, that's a little too strong a statement.
Mm.
But anyways, okay, let's move on with Madan. Before we move on, we have our dear Khali's messages. Khali, I hope you're doing well, and we are hoping that you're going to join us. So I'm going to read your comments. Even Quran itself is unable to maintain its style throughout the 114 chapters, and that's very true.
Mhm.
And it is very obvious that in many places in Quran, poetic rhythm has been maintained at the cost of clarity. Uh, in ambiguity of the verse, basically. And you're right. And the book, see, there are quite a few
What's that
contradictions within
called
there.
there? Ambiguity.
Yeah,
We've got
ambiguity. Yeah,
ambiguity. I think it's
yeah, yeah.
Imambiguity. You get it?
Right.
You know what it is?
Okay, that
Oh,
okay. Ambiguity, right? Okay. That if that was on purpose, that was excellent, right?
it wasn't
I
a
didn't.
correctness,
Yeah.
but it was poetic justice.
Poetic
But yeah.
justice, right. So yeah, that's very okay. That's now Khali has clarified. But that if yeah, that was so very true. Ambiguity, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. The criteria is so objective that no two scholars agree on these so minimum characteristics, and that's so very true. I mean, you'll have so many scholars. There's what's his name, Shabir Ali, right? Shabir
Mm.
Ali has a very different take. Then you have Yasir Qazi, who has a different take. Then you have Mufti Yasir Nadim Al Wajidi. Then you have quite a few, Muhammad Hijab, Hamza Tzortis. You have what's his name,
But we
Adam
must keep in
Deen.
mind, these are not scholars proficient in this particular area. Like I think Shabir Ali
Yeah,
is.
these are more apologists, probably. I mean,
Yeah,
in the scholar sense, probably Shabir Ali is a scholar for sure.
yeah, but
Yasir Qazi is a scholar for sure,
but
right?
even Shabir Ali is not trained in that particular area. I think. What was his PhD on? That's what I mean. You know.
I think he's yeah, I might be wrong, but I think he's considered a scholar, but maybe he's more of an apologist, probably,
Hmm.
right?
I think his PhD was on Christianity, if I remember.
Okay, yeah,
So he's not
yeah,
really
maybe.
a scholar, but he's trained. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say too much more than that. Well, I don't think he's a. I think Yasser Qadhi is a scholar, but in a particular area. And that's what we got to remember. These scholars, they also just like a scholar of physics. They don't train in every area. They might be scholar in one particular area, like a subfield within quantum mechanics.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
similar.
subfield like Hadith science or something
Yeah,
like that, or maybe
yeah.
the Sirah, whatever,
I would like to
Sirah
know.
literature and
I would
all
like
those.
exactly. I would like to know about more, scholars in this particular area. The linguistic miracle or something. That would be more interesting. But then again, I wouldn't just want to care about Muslims because Muslims do have innate bias, unfortunately, because they're proponents of the religion. They're looking at it very differently than the rest of the world. that we should have some objective, neutral, impartial scholars as well, linguists who not necessarily interested in verifying the truth of Islam, but assessing the linguistic style of the Quran. And we've not seen anything like that yet. And that is a weakening. It's an argument from silence, you know? So
Right,
Hamza,
right.
Hamza and Co does not realize that the argument of silence is far more devastating and vocal and loud and amplifying than they think. The fact that they only quote one scholar or two scholars of like who are non-Muslim, who are linguists, who arguably say something very vague about the brilliance of the majesty of the linguistic style, without any reference to the objective criteria, in itself is strong evidence supporting that this is not true. Because we'd expect, what should we expect if it was true? Well, we'd expect many linguists around the world confirming the objective criteria, but we don't see that, which is what? Evidence against Islam, I would say, rather than for Islam.
Right, exactly. And this is a very strong argument, I would say. Right. Uh, I mean, you have scholars like I mentioned this, and probably I'm repeating myself. Scholars like Gert Point. You have then Christoph Luxemburg, John Wansborough. I can name quite a few, names over here who are linguists basically, and scholars basically, and they didn't see any semblance of truth in these claims. They studied Quran in and out, and I mean, that's a pretty strong argument that these guys are there's nothing from them basically,
Yeah,
and not
exactly.
from them, and not even from the history as well, pretty much, right?
So that's like a very good debate point. When they raise this up, this sort of argument, the argument from silence, the total lack of a colosseum full of scholars, that which should be the case if this was verifiably the case, that it's not reproducible, then we should see modern day linguists, an army of them, all coming together, not just making a vague statement about it, like I said, but confirming Hamza's or anybody else's, any objective criteria, any of the objective criteria that have been presented. But we don't see that. And that is evidence against Islam, I would say. So it's funny because this argument itself shoots itself in the foot when you go down this route to try and say, oh, but there are linguists who confirm it. Well, there are many linguists who don't, and that creates evidence against it.
Right. Okay, I have to feign my ignorance on one part, Madan, and probably you, or when Kylie joins, he might be able to clarify. I haven't read this objective criteria that Hamza and company have produced, basically.
Right.
Have you seen it? I mean, are you aware of? I'm not.
Many
I
years ago,
probably just mildly heard of it, but
I've
so
completely forgotten about it, but it's apparently meant to be, like certain styles, certain like exclamations, certain how the Quran ends the paragraph, how the Quran uses certain themes, right?
right.
I cannot remember. I am literally trying to remember it. But,
Yeah, I think we'll. So maybe it's our task that we'll in the next stream we should clarify that if we, just briefly, so that our listeners who listen to this have an understanding of what we are talking about. Because I didn't realize that we're gonna deal into this. But this is if they have the only problem I have with this is how have they collected from their own judgment that this objective criteria. I think you already mentioned it. This objective criteria is based on subjective understanding, basically. Isn't it? I mean, if somebody else reads through the same documents, the same Quran, he's gonna come up with a different criteria, objective criteria, which means that objective criteria is not really objective.
Yeah, in some sense, that's correct. Yes, you're correct that in terms of any person can subjectively determine other things as more important and think, what about this? What about that? Yes, but Hamza does have a point in the sense that if you can quantify it and a human can't reproduce it, then it does suggest something weird, right? It depends on certain conditions. So let me just give you an example. if I write a sentence in English, let's just use the English for an example, and there are certain grammatical rules of punctuation, of organizing the text, grammatical rules to separate sentences, paragraphs, and so on. Clearly, you should be able to write another sentence using the same rules, like with commas, exclamation marks, full stops. Yeah, you should be able to reuse those. And that's probably perfectly easy for any human to do, be able to reuse a comma, reuse a full stop. But if he's saying that you can't actually reuse it, like you can't simply write a text and you just won't be able to use a full stop in that, that is a bit weird, right? I don't know what he means by that. Does like God come and stop the physical hand from writing it? Is that what's happening? It just can't be reproduced, or what? What's going on? Whatever the case, if that really did happen, and it only happened for the Quranic text, or it only happened for the English language, then something weird is happening, and something unique about the English language, compared to other languages, or something unique about the Quran. So he has a point that if it were the case that he can quantify a set of rules, and you can't reproduce the rules in a new text that you create, that is not a replica of the Quran, but is something that you've created, then that does genuinely suggest that something is going a bit awry there, a bit weird. My only issue is that you can quantify the criteria in such a way that is very specific to the way the Quran is written, to a point where, of course, you're not going to be able to reproduce it, but because you can't reproduce it precisely because it's very stringently unique to the Quran. In other words, if you make unique, and you can do this with the English language, let's say you take an English sentence, right? And if you take an English sentence and you identify certain features of that sentence that make it very unique to that sentence and that sentence only, yeah? It's going to be very hard to make another sentence that is different to that whilst being similar enough to that. Yeah? Because obviously you're not going to get the same sentence or similar enough sentence because you defined it in such a way that is unique to only that sentence. Are you following me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, because let's say you write two words, and you can do that with the English language. Maybe there's only one type of way to write a short sentence, like maybe there's a short sentence will be like "be well, goodbye," and then I could say something like there is you can't write a two-worded sentence like this with this many letters. And it might be the case, but that could just be because of the unique nature of that particular sentence, right? I might say you can't. The good and the by, the sound of duh and the sound of by, is one feature. I can identify that as a feature. Now reproduce goodbye with that same feature without saying goodbye.
Right. Yeah. I think I understand your point, right? I mean, yeah.
Of course, if it's like that, then it's just a trick of the criteria itself, and I think that's what he might be doing. He might be making a trick of the criteria, but if it's just objective rules that can be reproduced, then a computer
but I see your point. Definitely, and I think that's what he's doing basically. I mean, it's not as simplistic as we are, just exemplifying it, but he's certainly doing the same trickery basically, at least in our minds basically. But before that, let's welcome Khali.
Okay,
Khali, how are you?
We've got a comment from one of our guests as well, who's been very appreciative of us. I think we need to definitely flag that up and highlight it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think I remember you were there last time as well. Appreciated you being there, listening to us. I hope you spread the word.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Khali,
guys.
how are you?
Yeah, I am good. I mean, I was not able to stop myself from joining because this particularly this part of the debate is very enticing for me.
Yeah, that's
for me to not comment on this.
That's the juicy bit that we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Right. Let
Yeah,
me, Kylie, just take my, just 30 seconds and finish reading
sure, sure.
as comments. Right. Whether or not you got lots of views, these discussions are intellectually stimulating, hopefully for you as well. So thanks. Thank you for saying that, S. And I hope that if you do spread the word, please, if you can, please do spread the word. Share it as much as you can. Like it. And if the stream is done, if you comment on something good, bad, whatever, that's going to be good as well. That's probably going to increase the visibility as well. So we do appreciate any viewers that we have, but we can do with more for sure. All right, Kelly, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to expand on the point that Mahadin just mentioned that if you develop the criteria around such tight criteria which only fits the Quran, then of course you'll not be able to imitate it. But I would say that making a criteria, or a simple enough criteria which would apply to the entire Quran, I don't think they will be able to do that. I have seen videos where they've tried to develop some sort of criteria based on a single surah. Particularly, I've seen many videos around the surah Kausar, which is the smallest surah in the Quran, and the criteria they develop based on that particular surah is so strict that the other chapters of the Quran don't pass that criteria. So it sort of defeats the entire argument then, because you're saying that this small piece of literature was the only piece which was able to fulfill this particular set of criteria that you have just developed, and even God himself was not able to replicate that in his own book. So it defeats so this is actually the trap they fall into. I've seen them I've seen this happen.
I think, Kelly, we have talked about this problem in the past, probably in one of our streams, right? That
Yes.
you can pick, and I think you gave the same example, the Surah Kausar, right? And it's or pick any other smaller surahs, pretty much, and then you try to produce something similar to it. I mean, even that surah is probably not gonna pass the test, pretty much, as you just said, right? All right.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think Kylie's on mute.
No, I guess I mean we can move on. I just wanted to add that I've already shared a few points on my comments, so we can move on.
Let me just add something, one more thing. So anybody who wants to debate, what I would do if I was debating hijab on these things, it's all right. You might think I'm giving away my debate hand or something, but it's okay. You can have preparation for this. You won't be able to get around these points. I would talk about the problem of silence from the linguistic academic community, right? Who are Arabic speaking, who don't confirm anything remotely near an objective criteria. One, I'll talk about the specific problems of the tightness, as Ami and Kylie has talked about, of a criteria which can be deceptively non-reproducible.
Irreproducible.
Yeah, irreproducible. I can't even say that. Forget that. So I'm going to say non-reproducible, deceptively in that sense, but only because it was designed in such a way, as Kylie mentioned, even the Quran can't live up to it. I'll mention that. I'll also mention if it is reproducible, then, and it's a fair test, then those parts should be. It's one or the other. It's like a binary. Either it is reproducible, but a human can't do it, but because something prevents the human from doing it, like God comes and prevents it. That would be how it only makes sense. If it's not reproducible, it's only because it's very stringently assigned to the language that it can't be reproduced, in which case it's not a fair test. I'll make that argument. You see what I'm saying? So either it's a fair test, in which case it can be reproduced, or it's not a fair test. There's no in between. If it is a fair test, the only way then you can't use the same language effects is logically speaking, is if some sort of jinn, some sort of supernatural force stops you, like you're trying to put that little grammatical feature in, but your hand just falls, the pen goes out of your hand or something, you know. Otherwise, it should be reproducible. I'll say that part. And the other things that I would say is just the general argument against miracles. You know, David Hume's argument. If you guys know that something is more likely to be a deception or a trick of the eyes or a fraud than compared to be than it is to actually be an actual act of divine intervention. I'll make that argument. The reason I will do this is because I'm not proficient in Arabic, and I think most people, when they're confronted with this linguistic argument, they don't know really what to say. I think this would be at least refreshing and new, because I'll be stacking the deck with loads of different arguments. You know, argument from silence, the problems with the linguistic argument, and David Hume's miracles, because then they'll be forced to deal with that, and that's actually a very hard argument and a very strong one for atheism. Yeah.
Okay, my one question would be, what would be more miraculous? A miracle of a language that is very obscure, that is only spoken by 2% of the people, or miracle in a language that is spoken pretty much by the entire humanity? Which one would be more miraculous? Inimatability wise, I'm saying,
of
is the
course,
question.
Exactly.
And particularly,
sorry, go on.
I mean, and particularly, not to miss the point that the language that we're talking about is spoken by those who are challenged, who most of them will never dare to even attempt this test, right? Because majority of the speakers
them
of
are,
this
yeah,
language,
exactly,
right? See, majority, and not just majority, a huge majority, almost. I mean, I can't say 100%, but I mean, almost the entire population that speaks the Arabic language would never dare attempt this challenge. So so we are already setting the let's say the chances of this happening to a very low level. Probability falls down right away.
bare minimal almost, right?
Yeah. So, and also, I mean, one thing that we have to note is Muslims often, whenever they are mentioning this miracle, they often state that this particular challenge has been there for the past 1400 years and nobody has attempted it. I mean, first of all, I think it's a straight out lie. But let's say, if we say that most people don't even go there, because it's, number one, we have discussed that it's a very vague claim. But even if it has been made objective, quote unquote, by some very recent scholars or the proponents of Islam, the problem stands that even with these scholars or some scholars presenting an objective criteria, they have no consensus on this. So even if one tries to invest in fulfilling, Hamza Tzortis set of criteria, that test won't pass the others. So he would only, let's say, and we know that even Hamza won't accept the criteria and would accept that that criteria has been fulfilled. So investing into that particular effort or that even attempting it is not worth it. That is the reason that nobody goes for it. Number one, it's vague. And number two, the criteria is offered by many Muslim scholars. There's no consensus on it. Nobody agrees on that. So, before Muslims offer this challenge to the world, please have a consensus on this.
Yeah, please unite.
Yeah. So first of all, unite on the set of criteria that you want to present. And then at least do that. Although even then we could say that, was this objective criteria actually what Quran meant? I mean, when the Holy Prophet actually mentioned this to the poets of the time, was this what he was trying to say? Really? I mean, and it was only made clear to the human beings after 1400 years. 1400 years later. Quite strange.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean that's the point I was making to Mahadin as well earlier. That it's like a subjective objectivity kind of a kind of that you criteria basically. And yeah, I mean, what they should do is first unite, take it to your own major scholars, and say, okay, this is the objective criteria we are posing. Do you agree with it or not? And once they agree, all of them, then it makes sense to bring it to the world and say, hey, just challenge. But there are numerous problems to it. I think we should move on now, because we'll come back to it. Madin, you want to add something to it, or
No, no,
shall we move?
I think we've been on this topic for too long now. I think
Yeah,
we should
yeah. I
get
think we only ran the juicy bits were coming. You all knew it, right?
yeah.
Now I am claiming here, and I'm willing to be challenged today, that the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are the most accurate and numerous and frequent that come from an integrous source and unambiguous in human history. These five criterion that I've just mentioned, if you apply them to any other historical figure, it will collapse. For example, if you look at the Bible, Mark chapter number 13, you'll find that it says in one generation the heavens and the earth will be destroyed. Nostradamus made a prediction that in 177 years there'll be famine and war and so on. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made the following predictions. For example, I'll give you some. That the barefooted Arabs يتطاولون في البنيان, that they will compete to see who creates the highest buildings. Now, we're seeing that the highest building in the world is in Burj Khalifa. How could the economic capabilities of these nations be such that if someone wanted to argue this was a self-fulfilling prophecy, that it was such? It couldn't be. Number two, that the Prophet ﷺ predicted the downfall of the Persian and the Roman Empire, the two greatest empires of that time, spanning millennia. Not only that the Muslims would overtake those empires. Number three, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ predicted the invasions of the Mongols. And I'm ready to give all the primary sources. It's very well known in the Islamic tradition. He told us how the Mongols would invade. And one of the biggest battles in Muslim history was Ain Jalut in 1260. The sacking of Baghdad was in 1258. And this is all connected to the prophecies of the Prophet. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us what kind of world we'll be living in. He said the world in the future will be such that there will be so much interest. مَنْ لَمْ يَأْكُلْهُ أَصَابَتْهُ مِنْ غُبَارٍ. Whoever doesn't consume the interest, he will be affected by its dust. We're living in an economic system, the whole thing is interest, women busters, perpetuated or exacerbated at least by the interest systems of the banks. I think South Africa is no different. Number five, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us that there will be an advent of sexually transmitted diseases due to an increased fornication. Number six, the Prophet ﷺ told us that women will go into the workforce. Yes, I'm not sure if any of you have heard this one. حتى تعين المرأة زوجها.
Okay, guys, I'm pausing here just to there's prophecy after prophecy after prophecy after prophecy, right? So maybe we'll just focus on 2 or 3 or something like that, right? Anybody wants to say anything about these prophecies? Kali?
Yeah, absolutely. So he said that these prophecies are clear and they're numerous. I mean, there were a few words he said about them, right? They are clear, they are very precise, and they are numerous. And I'm not sure if there was. I'm not sure that he used a few more criteria there. And I mean,
Right.
what I'll have to probably do is, I'll have to go into at least 1 or 2 of them. I can go into probably all of them, but I think that will take a lot of time. Which was the first one that he mentioned? It wasn't the Arabs one, right? Before that, he mentioned
Burj Khalifa, right?
No, he mentioned one before that, right?
Okay, let me just
Yeah,
go back.
I wanted to see that.
Five criterion. These five criteria, Mark chapter number 13, you'll find that it says in one generation the heavens and the earth will be destroyed. Nostradamus made a prediction that in 177 years there'll be famine and war and so on. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he made the following predictions. For
Something happened. Is Philo still there?
Hello?
Yeah.
The video stopped. Did you stop?
Or all right, the video has stopped. All right, you weren't able to hear it.
No,
No,
it just stopped right now. I mean, just a few
it might
seconds.
have been me, because I was pressing the screen and it just turned off. Then maybe I
Yeah,
should.
Okay,
maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, because I'm
all
one
right.
of the admins. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I was making the screen bigger, but gone. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
I think
So yeah,
that was the first one, right?
no, he didn't
Maybe.
mention any from the Prophet, right? He just mentioned a few from Nostradamus or something like that. Just keep
Okay,
playing
let's
it.
here.
That come from an integrous source and unambiguous in human history. These five criterion that I've just mentioned, if you apply them to any other historical figure, it will collapse. For example, if you look at the Bible, Mark chapter number 13, you'll find that it says in one generation the heavens and the earth will be destroyed.
Forward it a bit.
Nostradamus made.
Yeah, Kelly. Sorry,
Forward it. Yeah, I said
Forward.
because slightly.
He made the following predictions for that they will compete to see who creates the highest buildings. Now
I guess
we're seeing that the highest building.
Okay.
Right, that's the first one, right?
I guess.
These
So
buildings,
first of all, the problem is, as far as I have read the Quran. I know I might be wrong because I obviously I'm a scholar or something. I have read the Quran 2 or 3 times, so I might have missed it. But I want to know if there is any verse in the Quran which actually mentions prophecies as a criteria or as a reason for which the prophet should be accepted as a prophet. I mean,
I
particularly.
wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think you are right. I think, and I might be wrong as well. There is no such criteria.
Yeah. So
I
I mean,
mean, we are. I'm raising my hand, saying that okay, I'm ignorant about that, but
yeah,
that's as far as my information is.
me too. But I mean,
Right.
I might be wrong there, but I'd like to know if I'm wrong.
Yes,
As
exactly.
far as
Your
I know,
position as
there are
well.
many arguments that Quran provides for God and for in order to accept Muhammad as a prophet.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any verse which mentions that he tells you, oh, he tells you about future, or he gives you some prophecies which have been proven correct, and therefore you should accept him as a prophet. And which is quite, I think it's quite telling that a lot of these. In fact, there are verses in the Quran which mentions that I don't even know about my own future. So I mean, there are certain verses which indicate that the prophet didn't know the future, and you, on the other hand, are claiming that in fact his prophecies are the criteria upon which we can judge his prophethood. So this is a big red flag that these prophecies, particularly the ones in Hadith, were actually added later on. So interestingly enough, so the first prophecy, about the Arabs one, I'll come back to that. But generally, so I just want to comment on this entire argument as a whole right now. The argument from prophecy, majority, in fact, 90 or 95% of these prophecies are based on hadiths. Now, the problem is many of these prophecies had already been fulfilled before they were documented.
Exactly,
That is,
and I was gonna come to this point, but you
yeah,
already, yes,
because
exactly.
so the Persian and Roman defeat or the fall of their empires.
That happened pretty early, actually, in the conquest,
Exactly,
Islamic conquest.
it
It was
happened
probably
during the
636
Khilafah.
that,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it was
happened during the Khilafah.
636 when Byzantine was conquered, and probably 638 or 640 when Persia was conquered. So within
Exactly.
within 8 or 10 years after purported death of the prophet,
Right.
these two were conquered already. So yeah,
Right.
sorry,
So
go ahead, Cal.
so such prophecies are not, at least cannot be an evidence for the humans or for people today. Why would we accept that a prophecy which was written 200 years after the event had happened you are going to claim that, oh, you see, the Prophet actually had already prophesied it. Well, why should I accept that it was actually prophesied by him, or it was actually written later on? So, number one, this is a big problem. Number two, again, an indicator of the problems with the prophecies, particularly in Hadith. You see that, the prophecies and a lot of future events which were foretold by the Prophet in quite a lot of detail. You see, the detailed ones, particularly mentioning people, how they'll die, what will happen to a particular tribe or a particular person or a particular nation. So all the prophecies which are quite detailed enough, happens to be
Didn't come true.
only, or happens to be only related to the period up till the time they were documented. And all the prophecies, or it's quite clearly all of the prophecies which relate to the period after the documentation of the Hadith are quite vague in nature. They aren't very specific in terms of which area does this pertain to, which nation, what actually would happen. So these are quite vague, which again gives you an indication that these events or these prophecies which Muslim claim to be some true prophecies or some miraculous prophecies, but actually were actually written down or documented later on, after the events had already happened. So, because if that had not been the case, we would see similar prophecies of similar nature for periods throughout human history. So for the next, let's say for the rest of the 1400 years up till now, we would see very specific prophecies, but this did not happen. So this is a very I would say, for a person who's looking into this subject with a very open mind, this raises a lot of questions. Any comments to you which you
Right. No, I agree with you. And I just wanted to highlight a few prophecies that didn't come true. And you're right that they were vague. And in particular, I remember a few, and I don't remember the exact wording, but there is one prophecy about one. What is the judgment day? When is the judgment day coming? Right?
Yeah.
And there is this young kid, and then the prophet looks at him and says, this won't see the end of life, or something like that. I might be paraphrasing or something like that, but it's something similar to that. He won't get to see the end of life, and the judgment day will come before his death, or something like that. So correct me. But there are few prophecies regarding judgment day, and they seem to have well passed their time, basically. I mean, when is the judgment day coming? In 100 years time, or something like that, right? So they're not talking about these prophecies that haven't come true. And where are these prophecies coming from, which have been considered to be true, but they are really vague, right? I mean, the ones that he has quoted. Let's address one by one, right? Maybe at least address one or two of these, right?
Absolutely.
Highest building one.
The highest building one.
Right.
So you see, and I'll actually raise another pattern that you'll note, because whenever I listen to such arguments, I do look into it. I do check out the prophecies of the Hadiths which mention this. This particular, let's say, Hadith, which you in fact mentioned, which mentions that this child is not going to die. So it goes something like this, that what it means is that when this child dies, that will be the end. That will be the end of this world, something like that. Now, there are actually different variants of that particular Hadith, and Muslims actually say that in some other variant, actually the Prophet is only saying that no human who is alive today will be alive after 100 years. So what he means is that actually he's only talking about the people who are alive at the time, or they play also the card like wherever he's mentioned that the Qiyamah will be in the next 100 years, something like that. He's like, well, there are different kinds of Qiyamah, like there are different kinds of what do you call Qiyamah in English? The
last day, the judgment day, maybe.
yeah, I mean, but
Apocalypse. Apocalypse is the word.
apocalypse. Yeah,
Right.
that's it's a big word, but I would say so. They say that the apocalypse that Prophet was talking about in these particular hadith, which mention a very short period of time, actually meant a smaller apocalypse. Like so they use the word Qiyamah Sughra for that, which means smaller Qiyamah. So something big event, as a big event would happen, or in the next 100 years. So now, when it's so vague, and they can point towards anything. So the problem is that there are different variants of a particular hadith. Even a single hadith, there are different variants or different ways that a single hadith has been quoted. This particular hadith also has different variants. Which one? And the one which mentions about the building of, building tall towers, something like that. And I think I learned about this from the video which Hassan Ridwan actually made. And in fact, Hassan Ridwan actually has a blog on this. And he actually detailed out that there are different hadiths on this. None of the hadith actually mention that it will be the Arabs. And I've often heard Muslims mention this, that Prophet said the Arabs. The hadith never mentions the Arab. It just says the Bedouin, barefooted Bedouins.
Just wanted to clarify, Kali. So since I haven't read this hadith, maybe I just want a clarification. So you're saying that the hadith says that the barefooted Bedouins are gonna build tallest buildings.
Not the tallest. Yeah, no, not the tallest.
Tall towers.
They're going to compete. They're going to compete in building tall buildings, actually. So that's what they're going to do.
So
yeah. In fact, let me see, because I did collect them all. I have actually collected the various hadiths.
Yeah, because then that changes the whole game.
Yeah.
I mean, even if for the sake of argument, right? Even if for the sake of argument you take it that the Muslims are gonna build tallest buildings, I mean, what are the chances that you predict something and something comes out to be true in 2000 years, 5000 years? One day they and especially when it's written, it's called what is it called? Mahadin, probably
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Because now, since you read that hadith, you're gonna do everything in your power to make it come true, right?
And exactly. And you see,
and that's one of the very fundamental reasons why you have that what is called that Arab Tower in Mecca. I forgot its name. Right, the building. Yeah, the building. Right. Yeah.
Let me quickly say something on this then, since I've been quiet.
Yeah. Mahadin.
So
sure.
Regarding this, I think for a good criterion for a prophecy would be from some of the things that you mentioned already. Let me just organize it and gather it together. A clear, unambiguous passage in the Quran or the Hadiths, right, stating something to that effect that prophesizes something in the future, right? That would be a clear, unequivocal, unambiguously direct version of a prophecy that cannot be interpreted as anything else. If it has multiple usages, multiple linguistic ways of interpretation, it means different things, then it already kind of gets a bit muddy. I think the second thing would be something like, it can't be something mundane, can't be something achievable through guessing, can't be achievable through mere predictable thinking, or or even informative thinking with guides and disciplines and think tanks. Maybe you're not going to have think tanks back then, but I'm laying down a generic criteria for prophecies. So today, you can pretty much prophesize almost, quote unquote, climate change, but that's not the same thing, So it's not that type of prophecy, and therefore it's predictable through our machines, and therefore this is not the type of prophecy that we really mean is supernatural. So it has to be something more than mundane, and so on. And as you mentioned, it has to be something beyond us to attempt to create or fulfill. So it can't be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If human beings can go and perform this task, then that could be attributed to human beings. And since we can never distinguish between whether this was achieved via supernatural intervention or just by human effort, a plausible explanation for any prophecy that can be accomplished by a human being is that it was because it was accomplished by human effort. That's one plausible explanation, and that is more probable than the supernatural explanation. And between a supernatural explanation and a more probabilistic explanation, Occam's razor, the more probabilistic explanation should explain the matter entirely. So, and then the actual prophesized event itself should be, in terms of the linguistics or whatever is prophesying, it should also be unambiguous. It can't be applicable to a whole host of things. And this is the problem with falsifiability. If the event or thing or the phenomena, object, whatever it is vaguely described, then it might be applicable to a whole host of things. So if it says somewhere, barefooted Arabs, what does that mean? It could mean literally barefooted Arabs. It could mean genealogically barefooted Arabs. It could mean poetically, metaphorically. You can have various different meanings. And similarly, the word tall buildings. Well, what is tall? Tall can mean anything, right? It's such a broad criteria. Yeah, 15 foot could be tall, but that's 20 foot could be tall, 150 foot could be tall. What is tall? You could try and specify and say that's taller than the Arabs of the time, but the buildings of the time, and then it just doesn't seem that much more interesting anymore, because which I'll go into explain in a minute why. And similarly, if somewhere it says a rock will be found somewhere on the planet, these are so vague. It's got no time frame. It has no somewhere on the planet is so generic, so it could be anywhere in the planet. A rock will be found. Well, what do you mean a rock? Obviously, rocks are so mundane. So all of these things have the same problems that I've already just talked about, the mundaneness and so on. But the vagueness of the actual thing that's been described makes it unfalsifiable. Meaning, if time goes on and there's multiple chances, hit and miss approaches where people will just look at and examine the Quran, and geographically there are millions of Muslims around the world looking to score a goal by fitting in this elastic linguistic word like rock, stone, whatever it is. It's such a broad term, and you can fit it with any phenomena. Well, with enough time, it could just through a hit like lottery, like the law of large numbers, like playing gambling, it will just by probability alone, sheer probability alone, might just come true, because it's so vague that you'll find something to hit it. So a good prophecy would be falsifiable, meaning that it will be time restricted, time sensitive. So it'll be saying something like, in 112 years, in the month of February, in January, this will happen. Then now it's very specific. Now it's not, you can't just wait 2,000 years. Now it's a very specific time. Secondly, it would specify in such a way that it can't be produced by human beings. So it might be saying that a meteor would land in this particular place, right? That would be so specific. That would be very, very, it can't be accomplished by man. It's very specific. It's very falsifiable, meaning it's very easy to falsify, right? The unfalsifiable one is so broad and elastic in language, and there's no time period, no time end date, no, nothing, that it has an endless ability to come true eventually. And I would make the argument that is, since it's open to that, we can't distinguish it from luck, hit and miss, probably, luck. The probability of it coming true through luck is inscrutable, meaning that we can't give it a particular number that it's very likely to come through naturalistic trial and error. But since it's an open possibility because it's so open-ended, that is a plausible explanation, and that should be favored over a supernatural explanation. So those are the type of arguments I would deploy, and that's all applicable to everything that you guys have said already.
Right,
Yeah.
great point, Martin. Yes, I agree. I think we can, in a nutshell, we can say a few things, right? Clarity is very important, right? A precise timeline is very important, right? And then it should be something that should be beyond, humans, mostly, right? And these are some of the points. Yes, definitely. I think. Let me take this comment by S. The progressive challenges sound like salesmen discounting merchandise to get people to buy his goods. Disbelievers didn't take the challenge seriously because they didn't take the book seriously. Right. Yes. True. All right.
That's a good point.
Kelly, sorry, Mahadin, you wanted to say something about the comment?
I just wanted to just mention something. Yeah, that's a good point because I think that also forms a piece of evidence against Islam rather than for Islam. So
Right.
if the main challenges are not doing the trick, and it has issues with it, like it's just not it's not accessible to the vast majority of humankind. Like, for example, hijab says the linguistic mirror can't be reproduced, or we challenge humanity. Or what is he expecting? Is he expecting those two atheists to get up and answer that? They can't. Nobody can. I don't think even hijab can, not without years of expertise. And I don't understand how he thinks that's evidence for Islam, right? That's evidence against Islam, right? The fact that a challenge that I think because people are so glued to Islam that they don't realize the absurdity of it. If he was just born outside of the religion, he'll understand the absurdity of it. It's like, imagine, in order to emotively express the absurdity of it, it's imagine like someone from the Amazonian tribe saying that there's an irreproducible, reproducible
Reproducible, right?
something, and
Right.
in order to do it, you have to learn a specific type of art style first.
Right.
And he's walking around New York telling people this. That sounds absurd, right?
That's
This
this is an absurd argument, right?
that's how it
Totally.
sounds to everybody else. And the fact that hijab has to prop it up with all these other new discoveries, like S is saying here, it seems to be evidence against Islam.
Right.
Yeah.
Kylie, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought of another point about the inimitability argument. So, actually, it's what Mahadin was just mentioning. So, the way they have actually presented this is, as you said, that it would be such a waste of time for someone to even invest in this, because
Exactly.
if that person doesn't know Arabic, not only does he have to learn Arabic, he has to learn Arabic to be at a level at which he can actually, be a sort of an art, be a literary master of Arabic language, being able to produce some sort of poetry or literature in that language. And even then, when he goes around and if he judges the book, people are going to say, well, we don't believe you. You're just lying. So all the effort that he would have put in would have gone to waste, right? So nobody even attempts it because it's just such a waste of time. So no.
Yeah, Kelly, sorry, your voice is breaking. Were you finished or not?
Yeah. Were you able to understand me earlier?
Your last few words broke, so I'm not quite sure. Yes, I think that thing is pretty darn crazy, inimitability problem, right? But go ahead. You wanted to say something, right?
Yeah. So we were discussing the prophecies. Am I clear now?
Yes, better.
Okay, great. So since we were discussing the prophecies, Mahadin raised a very good point. So since we're discussing, so we're taking the tall building prophecy as a test case. As Madhan mentioned, what does tall mean? It could mean anything. For an Arab, a four-story building is tall. Uh, as far as imagining that people would build tall buildings, if Muslims think that this is so unimaginable that someone would even think about it, it's that would show a lack of understanding of human psychology and human history and archaeology. If there is one constant among all the civilizations, we see an obsession of human beings with architecture, with building large structures as large as they can. I think this is be common in every civilization. So they have built structures as large as they could, because building structures were sort of their memoirs, was their way of living through sending something into the future, because stone was considered something long living. They could see that they themselves are mortal, but stone or something made up of stone appeared quite immortal to them. So they would say that they used those structures as their memoirs, their way of sending themselves into the future. So just saying that building tall structures is such a human thing that it is found out, or it is found in every human civilization, even those who have vanished. So
Right. I
even if
mean,
it,
you go ahead.
yes, sir.
Sorry, finish it.
Only if you want to raise a point, you
No,
can.
no, I'm just attesting to your point that basically
Mm.
you can see that with the Egyptians. If you came
Right,
to Indian civilizations, the Chinese built
right,
the Wall of China, the longest. When you talk about the tallest structure, why don't you talk about the longest structure or the biggest, the pyramids
right,
and all those things, right? I mean,
right,
what just differentiates that tallest building? Or why
right,
only tallest building, right? That's the
right,
question. You could take any other other attribute and
Think
say
about it this way.
this should be yeah.
Yeah, think about it this way. You can imagine if Muhammad said anything else in that way, in that place, he could have still been right. And this is what makes it quite probable
Vague,
that
yeah.
it
Yeah,
can, yeah,
vague and probable, right.
probable that it'll just come along, come out to be true through hit and miss, chance events,
right,
law of large numbers, the millions of
Right.
people trying to find
right,
fit together. Think about it this way: if he said there will be tall, uh, well, not tall buildings, there will be white buildings, he would have still been correct. There would have been blue buildings, he would have still been correct. There would have been
right,
short buildings, he would have still been correct. There'll be tall carriageways, he'll still be correct. There'll be tall people, still be correct. There will be people who wear red hats, still be correct. It'll
It's
be,
yeah, it's so yeah.
now imagine if you said people with red hats will make buildings in our Arabia. That will still be correct because you'll be able to find people with red hats.
Right,
Builders
right.
wear red hats. People. Now, if you imagine he said Bedouins and Egyptians and Jamaicans would make tall buildings in Arabia. I'm sure you can find Jamaican workers in Arabia who's helped. So when
Right,
you,
right,
right,
when
right.
you do it like that and you think about it, it's actually very, very elastic. And this is what I mean by the this is why the versatility of language. Um,
Right, right.
no longer that interesting because anybody could get things right like that, and it is no longer a very tight, very very specific, falsifiable prophecy. A real prophecy would be like a meteor will strike the Earth at this
Right,
coordinate
right, right.
geographically at this date on this particular time, and they'll give you time coordinates. They'll give you geographical coordinates. That will be hard to do, right? That would be really hard to perform by humans, and that is really precise, and it's not susceptible to these because it's mathematical. It's not susceptible to this linguistic sort of elasticity, and
Exactly.
that would be imagine loads of those in the Quran. You had me believing in within a very 2 seconds. At least there's
I,
something that
I
Allah.
I think I think we have beaten this tall building prophecy to pulp pretty much.
not yet. I'll give you a few. I'll show you. Not yet, because I want to show you how many different ways this has been mentioned. So how many different variants of this particular hadith are there, and all of them are Sahih. So you once you go through them, you'll find, okay, so this is not clear at all. Even if you think that this particular statement that Hijab mentioned was
Right,
clear
right.
or precise enough. So I've sent you a link. Can you just go through in the private chat? Just open that link, and I think you'll be able to find 4 hadith on this particular subject, and
All
you can
right,
share this with us.
let's open this.
Yeah,
I think
Okay.
we have Saeed waving to us.
yeah.
Yes,
I always
we have
see his
Said. Said
mentioning
bhai, how are
hand
you?
pink waving. I don't, it's
That's a pink hand that's waving. Said bhai, hello, how are
okay.
you? I hope you're doing good. And yeah, we appreciate you being a constant presence at our streams. So yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Saeed, what do you think about the prophecies? The
Yeah,
hijab.
I think we'll take Said some time and talk. Said bhai
Say,
will only give you 5 minutes to present your case. Not too long, if we do
yeah.
take you in, right?
I
But
think what he'll say is say yes to Sahih prophecies, the ones that turned out to be true,
right,
and
right,
say
right.
no to the false prophecies, the one that turned out to be false.
It's going to be hard to get past that
Yeah,
barrier.
yeah,
All right, I'm bringing the hadith.
yeah,
The four
yeah. Me,
that
and
you.
while you get that link up, just to add on what Mahadin said, the elasticity of the language also plays a role in, making the prophecy vague enough or making it a lot more likely to actually materialize. And also, what we need to understand is the only thing that needed, because what Muhammad Hijab actually tried to raise it, then mention or take out from this hadith is that Muslims are going to be wealthy enough, they're going to be economically strong enough to build tall buildings or compete in building tall buildings. The point is, I mean, there were rich Arabs at the time. It wasn't like the Muslim at the time, all of them were very weak. Even by the end of the Prophet's life, the Muslim empire had grown quite rich enough. Since we mentioned that tall, there's no clarity as to what tall means. I think for them, for all it matters, it could mean a four floor building or a 5 floor building, whatever the tallest they could imagine at the time. So it's just simply making it appear miraculous that the Prophet prophesies that Muslims are going to be economically strong enough to compete in building taller structures. I mean, it's not miraculous at all,
Yeah,
because
I mean, you have to just sorry, just wanted to add. I think we should move on because we still have 5 minutes of video footage left to review on. But since I am also drawn into this, I'll just mention this one point in reality. That up until the discovery or the findings of the oil in Saudi Arabia and in the world, pretty much in the globe, pretty much, these countries were really, really poor. Pretty much, they were the majority of the economy was dependent on the pilgrimage. Pretty much, if you are to look into that, no, there were no tall buildings. If you see, even if you see the images of Mecca and Medina from like say early part of 20th century, and so you'll see that major Hajj and all those things, they were still done in like it was a place in shambles, pretty much. But as soon as the oil money arrived, you are talking about the tallest buildings. What happened to all those prophecies, like up until like that point, right? There were like Chinese were building tallest buildings, Egyptians were building tallest buildings, Indians were building tallest buildings, right? And Europeans were doing the same, Christians and all those people. Even the Aztecs were building tallest buildings. So yeah,
And,
yeah,
I'll also say that Hamza Tzortis endorsing this is contradicting and violating his approach to the scientific miracles of Islam, because on that he says that the Quran is multi-layered and multilinguistical, whatever he wants to say, and it changes with time. Not changes with time, sorry, but the it can mean different things to different people at different times. And he says we can never know that a particular verse is meaning that particular thing. So it does that for scientific facts. So, for example, even though it might say something like salt water doesn't mix or something or whatever, that he says we can't count that as a scientific prophecy. Reason being, science can change. Whatever knowledge that we have of salt water might not be the truth, because science can change, and therefore we can never think that's true. And furthermore, we don't know what the Quran actually means, because we don't know what it is intending to mean. Well, he drops this framework when it comes to these non-scientific prophecies, which has the same structure. It has
You're
a
right.
it has a linguistic sort of foretelling, and then he has to connect it to something into the world. But that's also subject to the problem of induction. So how does he know that this is, and he also, that is also a problem to the problem of intention. Like, we don't know what the divine author is intending to mean. In this case, it's not really the intention of divine author, it's more what Muhammad said in the Hadiths. But again, that's the same thing. What if we don't actually know what Muhammad is saying here when he says tall buildings? Is he meaning the tall buildings 10 years later, 20 years later? Is he meaning the tall buildings in the 21st century, the skyscrapers? We don't know. We don't know what he's talking about. And he's not. Hamza is being inconsistent in propagating this the prophecy approach when it has the same hallmarks of the same faults that he has already raised about the scientific miracle narrative. So it doesn't make any sense.
This is a very good point that you've just raised. I totally agree with that. Why would you throw away that particular approach when it comes to Hadith and what it says? How do you show that this is what? How are you ready to lock yourself down with this particular meaning of the Hadith when you're not ready to take a similar approach for verses in the Quran?
Right. I think Mahadin seems to have dropped off. But I agree to that point. And one more fundamental problem that I was seeing here. What happened to Mahadin? Mahadin, you dropped out. Can you hear us? I think he'll join back. Is first thing, how can we reliably attribute these hadiths to Prophet, basically? I think we did speak about all these things. I think first thing that needs to be done is to just be brought that down to, I mean, how many can you reliably? I think none of these hadith can be reliably put to a person, let alone Prophet Muhammad, put to a single person from the early part of the 7th century, before even 632, right, which is the purported time of death of Prophet Muhammad, right? And so it's really gonna be hard. I mean, there are so many problems, a series of problems. I mean, if you just multiply these probabilities one by one, you'll come to a probability that is gonna be abysmally low of these, these hadiths coming from, someone from the early part of the 7th century. So yeah, so many problems there. I think we should move on, because otherwise then we are gonna what do you guys think?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, it's just going through the hadith, which actually talk about this particular.
Oh yeah. Sorry, we totally forgot about that. Let's focus on this. All right.
Yeah. So you see, if you go to read the first hadith, it mentioned. So can you remove the comment from?
Yeah. Saeed Bhai's comment. Let me just.
Have you opened a particular hadith, or are you just? Have you just opened?
No, I just zoomed in on the ones that you gave me in the link, right?
Exactly. So now what you
There
just need to do is, right? You see, just keep it the top one. Yeah, it's slightly lower it. Yeah. Go down. You'll see tall buildings highlighted in every hadith.
Oh, right.
So you see over here, the hadith mentions when a slave woman gives birth to her mistress, not clear at all. Again, this hadith has a lot of vague prophecies, but Muslims often mention only one of this one prophecy within this hadith. And then you say, when you see the barefoot, naked, destitute shepherd competing in making tall buildings. Now, number one, are these the kind of people who
This is
actually
like
built?
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
are
really
these the kind
funny.
of people who actually built
Yeah,
these structures? Were this? I mean, was Arabia in such a bad condition that you would call them naked in general? I don't know. Then you would destitute shepherds. I think they'll have to prove that these buildings were built by shepherds, and if not, uh, what they're trying to say is that they were the shepherds were the forefathers of these people who built these tall buildings. First of all, the Hadith doesn't mention that. Right? Why couldn't the
right.
Prophet actually clarify it? He could say that the very next generation of such people would build not only tall buildings. You see, the Prophet seemed to have missed a very important point, that they would build the tallest building. He forgot to mention it. He just mentioned something which was quite obvious, which could be achieved, in fact, quite easily by
Yeah.
by a rich person, even in Arabia of that time. So the prophecy once again is it's quite unclear. Now, if you go to the very last hadith, I think there are
Sure.
four
Well,
among them.
yeah, I'll go
Go to
to
the
the
very
last
last one.
one. Right.
So this is another variant of this hadith. You see, over here it's mentioned when you see the herdsmen competing in tall buildings, and then this next statement goes when you see the barefoot and naked ruling the earth. So now over here in this particular variant, that particular those characteristics of the people who are going to build tall buildings have broken down into two, and it mentioned that those people are going to rule the world, and they're going to be herdsmen who are going to compete in tall buildings. So which one is it?
Right,
Um,
right, right.
now the prophecy becomes even more vague. So there are different variants of this, particularly when we are going to go into I would like to go into we don't have to go into too much detail about the prophecy about the Mongols attacking, but once you go through those hadith, you'll find even more variety about the characteristics of the people who Muslims considered Mongols. So yeah,
So,
so this
so
was
one,
one problem.
yeah, one thing to note here, Khali,
Yeah,
and these are all coming from Sunan Nasai and Ibn Majah, right? I think none of
yeah,
them is
yeah.
from Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim.
I think
Within
there,
I don't know. I mean, I'm
yeah,
just seeing these four, and then maybe there are in those two books as well. But even within the, I think I might be wrong here, but even within the Sahih Sitta, right? There is a grading, right? I mean, Sahih Bukhari
right,
is like probably at the very top, and then you have Sahih Muslim, and then below those, right?
right, right.
Uh, but I mean, I wonder what Sahih Bukhari. Yeah, I don't want to go into history of these writers, basically Hadith writers, but that's gonna be a topic we're gonna lead into a
In fact,
topic
sorry,
really way off.
this let me in fact give you one more variant of this prophecy, because that
Right,
one is
right,
even
right.
since you mentioned Bukhari and Muslim, this one is from Muslim. I'll just send
Okay,
you another.
right. Okay, let me open that.
I'm sorry we're going in so much detail, because I do want to clarify that people should actually go and look into this. So yeah, did you open it?
Yeah, I'm just opening. Right. Can you see it?
Yeah, okay. Now just see you see over here it's mentioned. Just keep it there. Keep it there.
Hmm.
Yeah, you see, when the naked barefoot would become the chief of the people, right? You see that?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, just highlight it. Yeah, and then after that, then from the side, and then when the shepherd of the black, now in bracket it's camels, would exalt themselves in buildings. Now, which means now in this particular verse, it mentions black camels. The shepherd of a particular kind are going to now this is quite. I might say this is a bit specific, but why don't Muslims mention this one? Since they couldn't find the forefathers of these of the builders of Burj Khalifa, they couldn't find, they couldn't establish that they were herding black camels, right? So this is a very particular hadith which again, it makes the wording. In fact, this is a lot more precise than the other ones, but it mentioned black camels. Muslims never mentioned this particular hadith for some reason because it
Right,
wasn't
right.
fulfilled. And this is the and
So
just to,
and this is coming from one of the more comparatively more
yeah,
Sahih of the Sahih, right?
and
Basically,
what you have to, what Muslims have to
what is the
actually
grading of this one, by the way?
Sahih. This is
No, it
there's
doesn't
no
say
there's
that.
no grading.
It
No,
doesn't
no,
say.
no.
It doesn't say
I'll
that.
tell
But
you
I
why.
mean,
I'll tell you why.
yeah.
It's Sahih Muslim hadith. You will not find grading of Sahih
No,
Muslim hadith.
I think yeah, maybe. So
Yeah,
so all the hadiths and Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari are considered Sahih
Sahih.
by default. By default.
Yes, yes. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
I just wanted to point out how vague these prophecies are in terms of how many
Right,
variants
right.
they have. So yeah, we can move on to the next
Right.
one.
Madin, you
You,
want to add something before we move on with the?
I think we've
We're beating
delved
this
into,
till its heads
yeah,
fall. Yeah,
I
no.
think yeah.
Let me just quickly say though, the thing that it ultimately boils down to saying is that there's going to be tall buildings. Ultimately, that's what it's saying. In a
yeah,
particular
Right.
yeah,
nothing else.
with
No,
the cultural members going to do that, and that's as mundane as saying there's going to be railways, there's going to be farms, there's going to be caves, there's going to be transport systems or something.
yeah,
It's just mundane, and every society has probably said something like that to that effect.
Madin Railways is still a better prediction or a better prophecy, much
It depends on
better.
where you are, though, right? If you're in the last 100 years, if a particular culture says we're going to have railways as well,
Right,
yeah, yeah,
they would be correct. And just like in
right,
the 1960s, and also in the 1960s, there were videos of people imagining that they're going to be talking through objects, or there'll be TVs that they'll talk through, which you could say is foreshadowing tablets, webcamming, streaming, and so
right.
on. But they kind of knew this in the 60s through just imaginative thinking. And human beings, there's lots of evidence of humans being able to do that. So what prevents? So it's very easy, just like Kylie said before. If you know there's a culture or those of cultures who are doing these things, you can just predict it for yourself. That one day is going to be like that. And the cultures who don't get it, which are probably going to be the rare exceptions, have a prophecy unfulfilled, and the cultures who do get it will have their prophecies fulfilled. That's kind of how it kind of works. It's like a selection bias. And what we're seeing here is that the prophecies that have been fulfilled is a selection bias. There's loads of random vague statements just like that throughout Muhammad's entire campaign. There's loads of stuff like that, and a very small selection of them have somehow, by a stretch of the imagination, fit through this random trial and error sort of over time linguistic trickery, and eventually they find something to fit it. That's exactly what we'd expect if it was made. If this was not a genuine prophecy, but just something that man has made up. Yeah.
all right. In fact, we just keep on adding points to it. You see, if this
Yeah.
was to be used as a criteria for Muhammad's prophethood, why would God allow different variants of this hadith to make this so unremarkable, right? Or quite so problematic or seemingly very human, something that a human could achieve or something a human could say. So once again,
See,
this proves that none of this is from God.
it's like someone playing multiple cards, basically. Just to make their
Yeah,
odds,
it's called
better.
cold reading, right?
Basically,
It's like cold
it's
reading
like
or hot
cold
reading, right?
reading. Yeah, right.
Just
All
guessing
right,
game. It's just like guessing. Yeah, let's move on.
yeah, let's move on.
How could the Persian and the Roman, the Muslims would overtake he told us how the Mongols would invade. The sacking of Islam told us what kind of world we'll be living in. He said, living in an economic system, the whole thing is interest, women busters. Number 5, the Prophet Muhammad told us that there would be an advent of told that is due to an increased fornication. The point number 6.
All right, this is just wanted to address this prophecy for a bit. He's saying that there will be an advent of STDs, basically, right? And this is so this is like what do you call? This is so not true. STDs existed back then as well, and it is in the records book that it was. The prevalence was probably not that low at that time, because there were seafarers, and seafarers used to have syphilis, gonorrhea, and all those kind of STDs, basically, right? And from what I read in the literature, the prevalence rate was not all that low. It was probably about 10% within the population, which is from that time's perspective is pretty high, by the way.
Only
and
high
imagine
because-
you. Sorry, Madin, did you say
I'm
something?
saying that's extraordinarily high, because nowadays the STD rate is under 1%. A lot of
Right,
population.
basically, and because of all these things, basically. I mean, you have what do you call vaccines you have, and then you have treatments, better treatments, pretty much. So you have you can control those things. And especially when you're saying that at that time people used to have multiple wives. See, imagine somebody who has say 9 or 11 wives, right? I'm not taking anybody's name here. I'm just saying, just giving an example here, right? Imagine that person, whoever that may be. There were rulers within the Umayyad caliphate, and within the Abbasid caliphate. There were rulers who had 26 wives at some point, right? I think Yazid had 26 wives. Abdul Malik had probably 11 wives or something like that, 9 or 11 wives or something like that. Now imagine what are your chances of contracting an STD when you have 11 wives? You're probably, you're going from one to the other day after day. Maybe you have divided days for each one of your wife, or come whatever, right? Your chances of contracting an STD are exponentially higher at that point, right? And now this guy is talking about this problem, that this was predicted, right? And it assumes that those people didn't know about it, right? I mean, it was prevalent. I would say they probably just didn't realize that it was. I'm not quite sure what the prediction was here, basically.
And let me, in fact, further clarify. I have also sent another link for Hadith and Bukhari, if you can open that up. Meanwhile, the thing is that Muslims often mention that just before the Prophet's, just before Islam came, the Arabs were in a very bad state. People call it the period of Jahaliya, right? The period of ignorance.
Right.
Now, during that time, what was going on? Let me show you by a hadith. So let's see what sort of fornication or what sort of things were actually happening at the time. And if that was the kind of thing that were going on in Arabia, then this is not a prophecy. It's just an observation, which he said will continue in the future as well. So this is a hadith. And if you go into this, now you see, if you read it from such a marriage was called, now another type of marriage was that a group of less than 10 men. So basically this hadith is talking about Aisha mentioning the different kinds of marriages that used to happen. Now you would call it a marriage, but let's see the kind of marriages that Aisha is talking about. So one type of marriage that was going on was, if you read it right from the middle, if you read it, such marriage was called as al-istibda. And then another type of marriage was that a group of less than 10 men would assemble and enter upon a woman, and all of them would have relation with her. If she became pregnant and delivered a child, some day had passed, and some day had passed her delivery, she would send for all of them, and none of them would refuse to come. And when they all gathered before her, and then she would choose the father, whoever she wishes for the father to be. So what I'm telling you is just one incident that I could recall right now, the kind of things that were going on in Arabia at the time. So just from that you could guess the situation that was happening in Arabia. Now, Arabia being apparently, not being very open in terms of, this is just a hunch that I have, in terms of the culture or the kinds of sexual freedom. I don't think that was going on that much. It seems there was, but let's assume that this was a very conservative society in which this was going on. What was happening in Rome under the Roman Empire or the Persian Empire? I'm not sure, and if that was if already there was a kind of environment over there which didn't look down upon sexual freedom or what you call fornication. So it seems like it was not a prophecy at all. It was just a simple observation.
A simple observation, right. Seems like so. I think I had come across this hadith earlier, right? Yes. Sorry, go ahead, Madan, please.
Yeah, this is what I just wanted to raise.
Yeah. Madan, your voice is coming. I can't hear you properly. Khaili, can you hear Madan properly?
No. It's coming as if his mic is very far away from his mouth.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's clear.
Better.
Yeah, it's clear now.
No, I just changed the screen. That's probably why. I think when I change, because I'm on my phone. When I change the screen, I'm no longer on this screen. So I'm in the stream, but I won't be able to talk or hear it. Because But did you ask me something?
No. Do you want to add something to it? Shall we move on? All right, let's move on.
No, we'll move on from this. This is kind of, I think, everything that I want to say on prophecies. Prophecies are not very interesting, you see.
Yes, no, I just wanted to add to this prophecy. Like, he's given a number of prophecies, and all of them have some problems. We just randomly picked 2 or 3, probably, I think, and I think we just beat the hell out of that.
If you have a God, then why would you give these sort of weird prophecies?
Right.
These are very, very human prophecies. These are.
I think we brought down Burj Khalifa.
And you know what? And Madan, I was just about to mention, this is the best they could bring. Just imagine. This is the best they could bring.
They're standing on a really, what do you call, weak grounds, basically. Extremely weak grounds, basically.
I was reading. I haven't read the book. I would not read the entire book that Hamza Tzortis wrote. But I actually went through the prophecy section in which he mentioned, he was giving the argument from prophecies. And just after 3 or 4 prophecies, he had to choose a prophecy which he mentioned that, this isn't considered a Sahih Hadith, but still, it seems very right. So you see, just after 3 or 4, it was maybe 4th or 5th one, maybe 6th one. Just the 6th prophecy that you were looking for, you had to select a Zaif Hadith. This is the kind of, strong grounding that they have to go to Zaif Hadith. And so just wanted to clarify that particular point, that this is the strongest argument that they could present in terms of the prophecies. And let me even further, we have already brought down Burj Khalifa, but let's bring down one more hadith, and I'm not going to take more than 2-3 minutes. I'm going to mention, actually, let's discuss this Mongol attack that he was discussing, right?
Yes,
let's see the prophecy about that.
That's a pretty vague hadith as well. I have read that and I thought of not touching it, but yes, go ahead, please.
Let's touch it. Let's touch it, and let's see what actually is this all this fuss about. Let me share with you. Hopefully, I'll be able to get on the right words. So open this up and let's go through. These aren't very big, long hadiths as well. So you'll be able to easily see how vague the descriptions are, how contradictory they are, and how this cannot possibly be a proof in terms of, considering it a prophecy. So let's go through these. Okay, so the first one mentions that the R will not be established if you fight with Khuz and Kirman. What they are, Muslims can just keep on imagining, guessing what Khuz means. Khuzmian meant that particular tribe. Kirman meant that particular nation that they fought. No clarity in terms of what it means. Then it says they will be of red faces, flat noses, small eyes. Their faces will be like flat shields, and their shoes will be made of hair. Now, what happens is they consider it Mongol because they have small eyes, they have red faces, they have flat noses. So this does seem like Mongols, right? But what are the two nations? Not clear. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. Okay, the next one. Yeah. Now this one says, now this is quite clear. It says, that I will not be silent until you fought with the Turks, people with small eyes, red faces, and flat noses. So this mentioned that those people will be Turks. Now, are Mongols Turks? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not good with history. I'm not sure if Mongols were Turks. Their faces will look like shields coated with leather. Do you understand that description? What does that mean? How does a face look like a shield coated with leather? I don't know. Maybe this means
I think that must have been some face mask kind of a thing
I don't know. But why would you call it that?
For the war.
Why wouldn't then the Hadith say that their faces would be covered with shields coated with leather? It says their faces will look like it. Strange description. I'm not sure. And then you see the next line says the R will not be established till you find the people whose shoes are made of hair. Now you see this is a different statement. It seems from this hadith that this is a different nation or a different group of people who will be wearing shoes made of red hair. So again, another variant. Let's go to the next one.
Right, Kelly, just one small point.
Yeah.
So what does the R will not be established until you fight with the Turks, the people with small eyes, red faces? I'm just trying to understand this statement. This is talking about the judgment day, right? Last day, right? The akhirat, right? Not
This
akhirat,
is,
the qiyamah,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it is.
Which
It seems,
means that if that happens, then you'll jump to the qiyamah or the last day or the judgment day, right?
you see, this is a big problem with these kind of hadith because Muslims play around with this because
Yeah, I mean,
whenever,
someone could claim that no, this is a requirement, and then it could be even an eternity after that until the
yeah, that's
judgment
what
day.
they say.
That could be something, but this
That's what
is
they say.
not exactly the meaning. I mean, I would argue that this is not what is meant. Somebody has asked a
Yeah,
question, right? When will the R be, right? And this is the thing, right? So the simple answer to this point is that when this happens, the R will be established, basically.
if this is what happens, then it's quite strange that when this happens and a person starts saying, well, this will happen now, I'm waiting for the hour, and it doesn't happen for the next 1,000 or 1,200
1,000
years.
years, right? Or yeah, right. It doesn't
So
happen.
it would be quite strange.
What kind of prophecy is that? Why would it be there at all? I mean, just don't mention it. Yeah. So, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so the next one.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one.
See, again, description is divided. You will find the Turks who will have small eyes, red faces, and flat noses. You see, this entire description is now associated with Turks, not
Right.
Mongols,
Right.
right? So again, and you will fight a nation who will have be wearing hairy shoes. So this is description of two different nations now, not one. Now to go to the next one.
Yeah. So basically, those vague earlier
Yeah,
hadith,
yeah,
those were still somebody could, if somebody were to take them for Turks, they wouldn't be wrong about it,
exactly.
basically,
They won't
because
be.
this one is clarifying that this one is pretty
Yeah,
clear that the Turks will have those kind of eyes and all those
right,
things.
right.
Yes. And uh, one thing just wanted to clarify here. You could have those kind of similar faces with even the people of the Tatar people of Uzbekistan and those
You're right.
areas.
You're right. Yeah,
They all have those kind of features that will pretty much match to these, not only just Mongols, right? So
right.
this is you're talking about a broad area which from where those people could fit this bill, pretty much this kind of a
Right.
description,
Now,
pretty much.
now just imagine that, since this hadith, there are so many variants of this, and there are all sort of permutations and combinations. within each of these, right? One says flat nosed and small eyes, then one says hairy shoes and small eyes. So there are different variants. Whichever one suits the Muslims, they're going to select it and say, you see, this one turned out to be true. And hence, this precise and numerous prophecy of Prophet actually proves the truthfulness of our religion.
Yes, I think one thing that Mahadan said in our private conversations, and I really agree with his point, is that you have to have that kind of persona to be kind of more, not exactly, I'm not getting the right word, offensive in a sense, to make these kind of claims look really powerful. What hijab has done, and this kind of may seem like ad hominem, but what may seem like his argument is like really authoritative argument is at the core a really weak argument. But the way he has put himself over there seems like he's conveying something that no one has ever delivered, kind of these kind of arguments. It's like a,
Yeah, I mean, when you say
just
something
a
like that with such
knockout
confidence,
argument, right? Yes.
when you say something like that with such, when you lie with confidence, the other person can get confused. But maybe the confidence is actually shaking my confidence. I've seen people say, I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of strange, but they are gravitated by the confidence of the Quran. And I've heard one or two of them say that, when they started reading the Quran, the very first verse of the Surah Baqarah, which is Alif Lam Mim Zalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fi, this is the book, there is no doubt in it. And I've heard people say that this very verse actually made them believe that this confidence can only come from God.
Right.
And they started, they're going to, okay, this cannot come from anyone other than God.
Right.
Okay, I have seen people quite a lot more confident, boasting about their skills or lying with such confidence that you could not imagine that they are actually lying. So I'm not sure. And I would say, the biggest point that they're missing is there are a lot of false prophets, whom they consider false, who also said a lot of things with great confidence. They just have to go through that to see the kind of confidence those false prophets actually showed in their claims.
Yeah, there were hundreds of prophets in those times, pretty much. I mean, that era was era of prophets, pretty much. Yeah. Anyways, I think we should move on.
Yeah,
probably.
Let's move on.
Right.
So I think we have broken down, actually, at least I think he made 6 points. We have broken down 3 of them. Only 4 of them.
But I think the pattern of objections are similarly apply to those as well. I think
exactly.
I don't need to
we don't need to go into further detail.
Right. Let's listen to him what he has to say in the end. Probably,
Yes.
I think we won't comment anymore on the prophecies, pretty much, right? I think we have
He's opened himself to a firing range.
We have buried the tallest building beneath the earth, pretty much.
Shoot me now, and we're like shooting at him with everything. That's what it seems like.
Prophet ﷺ told us that women will go into the workforce. Yes, I'm not sure if any of you have heard this one. حتى تعين المرأة زوجها في التجارة. This is a prophetic hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and many people in this room, I'm only kidding, exactly where Islam is going to spread. That the earth has been projected to me, and I saw its eastern parts and western parts, and all of the ummah will take what has been projected. Why does he say east and west, not north and south? Look at the map. He told us exactly where Islam will spread. He said it will go to Sindh al-Hind. It will go to India and Pakistan. He told us it will go to Egypt. He told us it will go to Asham, Jordan, and Lebanon, and these countries. Yemen. How could somebody get this so right? There's been no figure in human history who has predicted with such frequency and unambiguity the events of the future as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are just some examples. I could go on for 2 hours. And books have been written. Voluminous books have been written.
I think I had to call this out. voluminous books have been written on this, right? Yes. Anyone wants to comment on this, or shall we just move on?
Let me. What did he say again? I forgot. He talked about what was that? I don't know why my memory just failed me there. What did he
No,
say?
I think he just rambled on the same old thing.
Yeah,
Rambled
it just
on.
seemed like he was just Oh, he said he predicted the areas of the geography of in terms of
Yeah, where the Ummah is gonna spread and all those things.
Yeah.
Pretty much the
Well,
Egypt, the
Muhammad
East
Ali,
India.
and West.
Muhammad Ali predicted the round that his opponents are going to lose in, and that's
Right.
not,
Right.
and that's genuinely something that he was able to do. So first of all, the first thing is that these are things that people can do, right? And that happens a lot. I can do that. I can predict. I know law professors who can predict which cases will win in court and which cases won't, and they're generally correct. So there's something in the human ingenuity, human brain, human capability to see things. And if you're a good tactician or you've been informed by other tacticians, it's not beyond the human mind to guess certain things like that, but especially if it's combined with a self-fulfilling mindset, right? And so on. Now, I'm sure the actual reality between what he prophesied and what the conquests were differs a little bit, but you can predict these things. I mean, even Adolf Hitler may have predicted certain things, right? He predicted he's going to conquer these areas, and he did. So because when in fact most militants who successfully conquer, you could find something in their speech or narrative or the compendium of thoughts that suggests through sheer confidence, when they, especially giving a nationalistic speech, that they purport to already have accomplished the mission. We will conquer this. We will have this, And again, this is selection bias. The conquest,
Right.
the rulers who
Right.
fail, obviously
Yes,
they
that's
don't.
the survivorship.
Ones
It's
who
a survivorship
succeed,
bias.
yeah, the ones who succeed, they get written in the history books as during the conquest. And when you look at it backwards, you'll find that their speeches they showed so much confidence that they'll do it. So clearly, there's a lot of evidence that human beings can do these things, and therefore that itself is enough to debunk this entirety of what he's talking about.
You see,
Right.
yes, Mother. I mean, it's a very important point.
Kelly, just before
Yeah,
you
yes.
go, I have made the link public. Anybody who wants to join and talk, maybe put a point, please welcome. Kelly, sorry, go ahead.
So, Mahathir has made a very important point, and this is also among the list of points that I have jotted down for against the prophecy argument. That this could easily be considered a survivorship bias. What you're doing is, so just imagine and just understand. We just have to think about it in terms of the military success. Every person or every military general or the king who goes into a war actually goes into a war with the prophecy that he's going to win that war. And if that is what we consider a prophecy, then every general who was able to capture a large part of the earth made a lot of true prophecy then. He made a lot of true prophecies. Because nobody goes into war thinking that we're going to lose this war. Or at least they don't tell that to their soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when they face defeat, what do they tell to their soldiers? This is nothing. This is just a small defeat that we have faced. We're going to get back, and we're going to come back even stronger, right? And this is what we see. We see this is what happened in this case as well. This is nothing but a survivorship bias. A lot of these prophecies, in order for them to come true, nothing else was required except for the Muslim empire to stay, to continue to exist.
Yeah,
that's all that was required. The building prophecy only for that, even for that, the only thing that had to be there was the Muslims had to still continue to exist, and it would have come true, because even if a single rich Muslim, or even if there were few rich Muslims in the world, they would make this prophecy true if they had the power. So, I mean, it's Mahadin raised a very good point that this is a selection bias, a survivorship bias.
Or survivorship bias, yeah.
People should
Right.
look into this. People have to understand the survivorship bias. It's such a fascinating concept, and you're able to understand or point out a lot of incorrect assessments that people make based on a lot of things, a lot of data, right? This is a very important bias that people should look into. It's not just about this prophecy, this topic. People should go and look into this. This is a very important bias that we should be cognizant of.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with both of you. One thing that I just wanted to, put here is that uh, why aren't we looking at this in a way? First thing first, we need to establish that some prophecy or whatever prophecy is being talked about can be attributed to a particular person. Why can't this be certain statement copied from some other books, maybe from the books of the Romans, maybe some, where they were supposed to be, or they were supposedly talking about Alexander, right? Because he conquered pretty much towards east in India, right? Oh, sorry, eastern part to India and China, and then to west he conquered. The Romans conquered up to Egypt and all those places. I mean, it's really hard to even. These are all problems right over there. What you guys mentioned, but there are even more fundamental problems over there to begin with, pretty much, right? I mean, how do you first thing first, I mean, there have to be steps. Number one, step number one, establish that this statement or this prophecy is coming from this person, right? And then the step number two, three, four, five start to, you have to go into next step and next step, right, in establishing the validity of this prophecy, right, which we already have talked about in probably 15, 20, 30 minutes back or so. But the very fundamental thing, I think, is to establish that it is coming from a certain person very reliably. Unless that's true, I think, all these points are probably, yes, it's just deeper. I don't know. I can't get the proper word for it. Deeper, muddied water for them, basically, right? So yeah, that's the point I wanted to make. But shall we move on then, or?
I think so.
Encyclopedic, compendious, voluminous books have been written.
What
Good.
the heck was that?
That's why I stopped, Madan. I think we all tuned onto that pretty much.
What was that?
Encyclopedic.
That was just turned into
Uh,
Eminem or something,
I,
or like a
I
rapper.
just want to hear it once more. It sounded like, Mozart to me.
Voluminous books have been written. Encyclopedic, compendious, voluminous books have been written.
Say it again.
Muhammad Hijab likes to vomit that the vocabulary he has just memorized to to use in such debates or discussions. Nothing else.
This is all of this
Voluminous,
is just to
compendious.
compensate for the lack of strength of the arguments. That's all. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think after the atheists went, Aaron Fraser, because Aaron Fraser was very sophisticated and he was articulate as well, but his articulation was more academic, and he's just trying to match that sort of, I think, impressiveness. You know, that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
He's just trying to match. He's trying to create some strength there, and that's why they've got to do this. He's got to look how energetic he is. Look how strong he looks.
I think
And
it's
Yeah.
after he realized that after a time it's a shouting game. The louder you
yeah,
talk, the more compelling you look. Basically, more
yeah.
compelling your arguments look, pretty much.
And 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 out of these voluminous and encyclopedic books, this was the best they could bring.
Yes, these five prophecies, and he could go on and on and on for hours and hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours.
Hours
Yes,
and
and they,
hours of this, and I
But there
think
isn't that many prophecies, is there?
Exactly, there are.
Yeah. So is he lying? He's just straightforwardly lying there, isn't he? Is there like an encyclopedia of prophecies from Islam? No, there isn't.
I mean, there's a lot of them which actually had already been fulfilled before the hadith were documented. That's the problem. And that's why they cannot actually mention those.
Yeah, I think we should move on. I think I'm enjoying his language pretty much. That's a.
I'm not going to talk about that today. I've just given you as much as you need. Now, to respond to my interlocutor quickly, he's talking about the problem of evil. He had two arguments effectively. One of them was disagreement, religious disagreement. Effectively, and I don't want to straw man and make it correct, saying the existence of religious disagreement means there's no God. What the hell is this? Sorry to say. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. Quran says, if Allah wanted, He could have made the people one people. وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ. And they are in fact continually disagreeing. وَلِذَلِكَ إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ. Except for who Allah has rahmah on. وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ. And that's the reason why He creates them in the first place. He created you as a test, my friend, to see if you.
Shall we still move ahead? You guys wanna?
I don't even understand it. It's just saying God predicted that religion will diverge.
Yeah, it seemed to me it's like a circular argument. You're trying to prove God, but still you're saying no. God said you'll have multiple, and then okay, all right.
No, I don't think it's a circular argument. It's just
it's a made-up
he
excuse.
doesn't understand the sophistication of the argument of the multiple different religions. I think me and Kylie talked about it on the first stream, and although Aaron Fraser didn't define it like that, because even Aaron Fraser had to be superficial in his presentation. The actual more sophisticated.
So the problem of he's talking about the problem of evil, and then he had different arguments, right?
Yeah. No, this is religious disagreement and divergence.
Okay.
Right. In this case, I think so. He said problem of evil, then he jumped to religious disagreement.
Yeah.
But
right. He started off with the problem of evil, and then he jumped into the religious,
diversity
argument. Discord, basically, right?
Yeah. And what he doesn't, Hijab probably isn't aware, and I don't blame him for to some extent, because I don't think even Aaron Fraser went into that level of detail. So he's just making a general objection here. But I think the strong version of the religious disagreement argument is would be the idea that the existence of different religion is more expected on naturalism versus theism, right? Or a specific theism like Islam. The existence of the existence is more likely, even if you can build in within definition of Islam a deity that wants to or allows his religious message to get corrupted. Yeah. So the more sophisticated argument would be saying something like the Islamic deity. On the hypothesis that the Islamic deity is true, we should not expect, and even on the Islamic deity, he has certain properties that makes it internally inconsistent with the data, and therefore the religion Islam is internally inconsistent in the sense that we should not expect religious divergence to occur. That's one thing. Then he may say, but no, it's not the case, because the Islamic deity is defined in such a way that covers all this plurality, all this corruption.
He's quoting the Quran. He's quoting a verse from the Quran where Allah says that we will, if we would have wished, we could have created, you as same people, but we created you different, right? So that's what caught my eye, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that goes back to, when I was talking about one theory that can have multiple ways of fitting the evidence, and another theory that can only have a single way to fit the evidence. That would rebut, right? It's true that one logical possibility is that an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, merciful, compassionate God would just make it world appear as though that there's different religions and divergence and disagreement. But on the man-made theory, that's the only way the world would look, right? or the man-made
Right.
theory.
I see your point. Right.
And therefore it's a better theory, Occam's razor, etc. So it's a better theory that on the man-made naturalism and the naturalistic events, you would expect human beings to make up things that are locally relevant, geographically constrained, with all the geographical paraphernalia, all things that are relevant for that particular space and time during that time period, etc. And you're unlikely to see a universal message pop out. But on the theory of God, it's possible that he could have given a universal message. It's possible that he can give a semi-universal message. It's possible that he can send the message to many different places, Japan, Jamaica, or at least in continents. But he just happened to send it to one place and then let it, And before that, there was not a semblance of anything Islamic, right? And before and after that, it did get corrupted. Everything looks like it is within the sphere of the man-made explanation can explain all of that far more easily and far more resourcefully and economically, parsimoniously than the supernatural explanation or theistic explanation. That would be the most sophisticated argument of this using religious divergence. And I think Aaron Fraser does proceed to explain it like that, but he gives hints of it and it doesn't expand in the way I have done it. And if anybody written a paper, they'd probably do it like me with far more detailed Bayesian reasoning, math, etc., and show that it's actually more likely. And Hijab is exploiting this. First of all, he's probably happy that Aaron Fraser hasn't gone to that level of detail. But let's say if he did go into that detail, I don't think Hijab would know how to tackle that. To be honest, he would play these games. To be honest, yeah.
Right. Kyle, you want to add something?
You're on mute,
no,
maybe.
sorry. Yeah. No, I think Mahadhan has already spoken about this quite a lot, and we did cover it. In our first stream, so we don't need to go into further detail.
All right, let's move on then.
Which is going to be good or bad. When this is no argument against us. This is actually in line with God's wisdom and mercy. And he says evil, the problem of evil, which we've heard 1,000 times before. I disbelieve in evil. How about that? I believe evil is privation. I don't believe evil is substratum. Put evil under a microscope. Atheists, tell me where evil is. Evil is privation, is the lacking of God's goodness. That's what I say evil is. Tell me where evil is. Let me use empirical value judgment to show where the substance of evil is. Evil doesn't exist. How about that? As an atheist, you don't believe in God, but you believe in evil. But you can't put evil under a microscope empirically.
The thing is,
yes.
The things that Hijab says, like we could do a good imitation of him, but like it's almost like predictable, right?
Right.
It's just like if somebody paid me to do it, I could have done that same thing, maybe even better. He's just copying some degree of William Lane Craig, and the problem is he's just not explaining it himself in any good original detail. But even Aaron Fraser has that issue. But obviously, I've credited him in the sense that at least he's a breath of fresh air in the sense that he's got positive arguments for atheism, which we don't usually see. But maybe it's the timing, so it has to be very superficial, it has to be very quick.
I think they were cramped for time, so probably a lot of their arguments couldn't go through in the shortness of time, pretty much. At least that's how I would think, but I don't know.
Yeah, but here, there's lots of things that you can say. First of all, that he's saying there's just irrelevant value judgments that you're making. That's not necessarily the case. First of all, you can make the argument that the Islamic deity is you don't have to have an objective moral standard to find issues with the theistic moral, apparent moral proclamations of a God that are the attributes that God possesses, like he's a compassionate, merciful, all-merciful deity. And you can say that Islam is internally inconsistent based on its own standards. That's one thing you could say. And they might argue, no, what do you mean the own standards? The own standards, this is its own standards. God is described as a being that will allow this level of suffering. I think Aaron Fraser mentions Justin Schellenberg, and his argument is actually goes beyond that and actually makes the argument that no, God can't be like that, and it's not based on the Christian God. Justin Schellenberg's argument is based on a concept, Anslam's, I think, perfect good God, or I can't remember now, highest conceivable being type of God, and that's what this
maximally conceivable being.
and that is what the Islamic deity kind of is as well in some sense, and they could actually he makes the argument that the actual argument that Aaron Fraser made was in that God wouldn't make any basically, remember the 14 premises he made that was
Right.
very
19, I think. 19 premises.
whatever it was.
Right,
In a nutshell, when I actually read it, Schellenberg's argument, and it was basically saying, and I'm not going to obviously go through the 14 stages. In a nutshell, it was saying that if God exists, then anything he makes will be inferior to him. He can only so he won't make an evil world because his own existence is such that it's already perfectly good, and anything else that is lesser than that is something that he could avoid. And since we have evil in this world, and a God won't make something that is less than his state, then that's a contradiction, because you can't have evil in the world and have God exist that makes something less than his state. Oh, sorry, God exists that makes some evil in the world basically contradicts with this particular deity, and therefore God does not exist. That pretty much you'll have to go through the formulations to figure out how cleanly he does it. But in essence, that's what he's saying. That's not the argument.
I think his argument was based on 3 premises, and Khali might remember it better than I do. But one was the omniscience, maybe omnipotence, something like that. The prior purity. I'm talking about the Aaron Fraser's argument, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there might be a difference between these two, right?
He's taking Schellenberg's argument, and it was more than 3 premises. I think it was 14 premises.
There were 14.
Right. No, I mean 3 fundamental premises. Then he keeps on expanding onto those.
I did try to simplify it, but yes, I mean it was quite a long argument, and I think it would have been.
He talks about 19 premises in total, I think, and 19th is probably the conclusion, something like that. But he started with 3 fundamental, I think, those things. I think prior purity, omniscience, and something like that. What was the third one? I think I can't remember. I should have jotted it down. Khali, can you remember? Do you have them?
No, I don't remember it, or I did not note it down.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter because what I'm trying to say is that he's not tackling the Schellenberg argument in precise.
And one of the reasons that Schellenberg's argument could also work is it doesn't require evil to be objectively evil. It could be a privation of good as well, right? I mean, if there is, as long as there are grades within the good as well, this argument still works. And this is a response that was made by these guys, atheists as well, later on.
It doesn't require whether it's a privation or not. And furthermore, there's natural evil that God created. So I'm not sure what he means is a privation of good. You could say human beings who don't obey the moral order is depriving themselves of achieving goodness, and therefore their inability, their engaging through free will, exercising free will, their unwillingness to do the good is a privation of good, right? So therefore they create a more evil world. So Hitler created a more evil world through their free will, or you by lacking an intervening spirit to stop chaos are manifesting evil or depriving the good through and making it evil or something like that. I don't know. Deprive, whatever that means, privation of good, is to say that the natural state is good and then people act maliciously and make it evil or something like that. Different people define it differently. But you can't say the same thing about natural evil, which natural evil is that which is not conducted by human affairs. This is not by human practitioners, but God's apparent design of the universe. It's teleological evil, if you want to call it astronomical evil. It's like hurricanes, it's like earthquakes that are killing in millions and causing suffering. And this is the type of evil that is not a privation; it's a positive act. It's a presence. It's a creation. It's not a privation. It's a manifestation. So that also, that hijab hovers over that, doesn't realize that he's saddled with that problem as well. And like you said, Schellenberg's problem doesn't really, Schellenberg's argument, it doesn't really matter if it's a privation or not. It's just the idea that God wouldn't allow any of them. And it seems as though hijab doesn't pick up on that.
Right. Kelly, shall we move on? You want to add something to it?
I think Mahathir has expanded on it quite comprehensively. I don't think of any other point that I could add. I mean, the privation theory is just an assertion. It's if you're denying suffering, if you're denying the existence of evil in this world, then the question is, I mean, I would like to, raise a question. This is not entirely an argument, but I would like to see how do Muslims tackle this problem. If there is actually no evil, then whatever people do in this world, let's say Muslims often quote Hitler and all that, or people like that. Whatever they did, was it evil or not? Was it, if when they did something what we call evil, was it just lack of goodness? And if God can allow lack of evil or lack of goodness, then if a human does the same, would you blame him for that? So, I mean, this is just a point that I wanted to raise.
Right. I think excellent point. And also Mahathir's point about that natural evil, or whatever you want to call it, natural disasters or cosmic disasters, whatever you want to call them, they are separate to any human doings, right? You can call them evils. I don't think you can even call them privation of good. They should be rightly called evil, right? And without any human intervention. So
exactly. And
what happens to those, pretty much? And that's an excellent point, I think.
Yeah, and I would call, does pain exist? Well, I think it clearly exists. We feel it. If whatever you want to name it, I don't care about it. Why? If pain exists, then there's a problem. Why does it exist? Why would a loving God create pain? I don't know. I mean, are you saying that pain is the lack of pleasure? Really? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's many other ways to tackle this. For example, you just mentioned, first of all, hijab has said that this involves value judgments. Not necessarily. You don't need to make any value judgment to think a being that is compassionate would not create a world with pain. There's no value judgment involved. Value judgment means like we can throw out the problem of evil, no longer call it the problem of evil, we just call it the problem of suffering and trying to reconcile it with a compassionate being. There's no a value judgment is the following: being compassionate is a good thing. Being non-compassionate is evil or a bad thing. The good and the bad and the evil and the non-evil, they're value terms. Being compassionate, I don't think is a value term. It's more like a behavioral term, right? That's like being angry. Angry is not a value judgment. The behavioral expression of anger is a descriptive property, right? It's just describing an angry person. The value judgment is that these might be value judgments. Anger is bad, or you should not be angry. Those are value judgments.
Agreed.
Right?
I think yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anger is just a psychologist can look at an ape acting angrily and go, this is an angry ape. Anger is just like this outburst, this aggression, and these are just objective properties that you can describe. In the same sense, then, if anger, you can identify anger, then you can identify compassion in the same way. Compassion might be the opposite: caring, being nice, doing everything. All of these are all objectively descriptive behaviors. And if an objectively descriptive behavior is like compassion would not allow for something like intense, gratuitous suffering, then there's a contradiction between being a compassionate being and, as Kylie said, pain or gratuitous pain. There's no value judgment there, right? It's just noticing that those two things can't exist together. Nobody's saying that the pain is evil, and nobody's saying that lowering pain is good. We're just saying that lowering pain is something that is inconsistent. Allowing pain, significant unnecessary pain, is inconsistent with a compassionate deity.
Compassionate being.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that's entirely descriptive. There is no value judgment there.
Right. All right.
You understand
Let's
that,
move
right?
on.
It's like saying my mom is the type of being that likes to make cake all the time, right? And then for the next 20 years, she doesn't make any cake. Where's the value judgment? That's just like that's
Descriptive.
Yes, it falsifies the theory that my mom is that type of person. Is that true? No, the data says it's not. There's no value judgment there.
Right. Let's move on, Mahadan. I think we probably have only 2 minutes left in this, so let's finish.
What ontological status does evil have? How can you use the existence of non-existence to try and disprove the existence of the necessary?
Did you guys hear that? Shall I play it once more?
No, you gotta play it again.
All right.
That wasn't loud enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
I think he said what ontological
No, I'm just kidding.
morality does the atheist have?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Philo. Don't raise the volume.
All right. I really thought so.
Empirical value judgment to show where the substance of evil is. Evil doesn't exist. How about that? As an atheist, you don't believe in God, but you believe in evil. But you can't put evil under a microscope empirically. What ontological status does evil have? How can you use the existence of non-existence to try and disprove the existence of the necessary existence?
All right. How about that? Shall we finish on that note?
Yeah, let me quickly address that. My previous points circumvents that. Remember, we don't need to talk about evil in the problem of evil. I don't think, Ellen. I think it's semantically called the problem of evil just because of popularity now. But Schellenberg's argument doesn't really make a value judgment in that sense. Yeah. He's not using an independent moral standard. You don't need an independent moral standard. It's more to do with the internal inconsistency of the theistic standard or theistic expectations you can make, just like the cake example that I gave. It's entirely descriptive. It can be entirely descriptive and not evaluative. So that circumvents everything he's just said in the last bit. But even if we just concede, all right, we need an independent moral standard. I think I've all made proposals that you can. I think Ellen Fraser also has that, because I read his work after, in between the reviews, and he makes the same sort of case, similar, very similar to mine, not exactly the same, for morality. The weird thing about what hijab is doing there is he's being really inconsistent in the sense that he's saying, what empirical basis do you, where did empirical, why is it empirical all of a sudden? So these guys are a little bit inconsistent in the sense that they rely on a priori analytical philosophy, and they want empirical evidence of evil. It's just
right.
And that would only work if the atheist is a strict empiricism, doesn't allow for any rationalist a priori thinking, in which case the hijab could then make the argument that the atheist is inconsistent in the sense that he's an empiricist, but then all of a sudden wants to make a case for morality, and he needs to therefore show morality through empirical lens. But that still wouldn't mean that hijab is off the hook. It just means that specific atheist is inconsistent. Hijab then is to think about whether or not there can be an atheistic morality that is not accessed through empirical reasoning or empirical observation, especially when they make the argument that empiricism is not the only way. That's what Hamza has been arguing for like 10 years or something. He's been giving examples. Right. Lifting William Lane Crane quotes about the end and demise of the logical positivist movement, which is not entirely true, by the way, that the verificationist method of truth is self-reflexively faulty, and therefore the positivists had to disband their movement. And in fact, there are several truths that you can't prove through science that are outside of the scope of science, and he'll make arguments like, and this is entirely reproducing what William Lane Craig is saying. He'll say stuff like aesthetic judgments don't require science, moral judgments don't require science, judgments about beauty and music, they don't require science. Before you get to science, you have to use inductive reasoning and stuff, and that is beyond science, and so on. Well, notice one of those, that's not an exhaustive list. I can't remember exactly all of the types of reasoning that Hamza argues outside of the scope of science or doesn't need science. But one of them is morals. And clearly, and even William Lane Craig would probably concede that a case for morality can be made through reasoning alone. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to detect evil in a laboratory, or moral propositions, whether they're true or false, are not dependent upon like correspondence with the observational world. It doesn't have to be like that. So that's another fault, another inconsistency, I would say, that he's committing. And I think Aaron, I would like to hear what Aaron says eventually to those things. I'm done, by the way. Are you there?
Yes, Mahadin. Let me run this through its end. Probably only 30 more seconds. Probably, I don't know how much. It's about time. I think finish.
Waste of time, and we've got 20 seconds here, and in that time, I'll just recite Quran.
All right. So it's his argument is done basically. I think you finished it with a apt response. Callie, you want to add something to that response, and then we'll
No,
end the stream.
I think we did. I already mentioned my contention to the points that he was raising. So I have no further points, and I think Mahadin has covered it
Right.
comprehensively once again.
All right. Okay. So shall we then
I
end
think
the stream over here?
I'm also looking forward to the discussion about morality, and particularly the points that Hamza tries to raise, or that Hamza raises as counters to the arguments that Dr. Oppenheimer states. So that's also a fun debate, or a fun
Right.
review.
I think, we still have at least two very interesting parts coming from the opening statement by Mark Oppenheimer, and then from Hamza Tzortis, right? So those are going to be interesting. I think probably we still have we still have 3-4 streams at least on reviewing this debate, right? But this was good. I think we didn't advertise our. I think we have somebody has joined us. So Wesley Curry has joined us. I think you joined once earlier and you were quite abusive. So I'm gonna take you in, but I hope that you be civil in your arguments, and if you want to have a nice conversation, we are willing to have a conversation, right? Please. All right, you're welcome. And if you want to have anything on this debate,
Hi, my name is Wesley Lawrence Curry II. I'm the man with the dove that Jesus has shown all of you visions, how Islam shall fall at my feet at Mecca. How do you do?
So we're doing great. So you're here to, are you an evangelist?
No, I'm the Prince of Israel. I'm a Jew, and Jesus is God. And I'm going to fall all Islam on earth.
All right. Do you have anything constructive to add to this debate?
I prayed that 2 teeth be healed in your mouths from Jesus, and it was done. You won't tell it because Jesus gave it to you. You want war.
All right. So I'm gonna give you one last chance. Do you wanna say something about this debate?
Wesley, can I just say
And I
though,
don't think
Wesley, none of us are Muslim here. Did you know
Yes,
that?
all of you are Muslim. Jesus said to you, no time to talk Allah. That means you're a Muslim.
What does that mean? Sorry.
It means you're a Muslim.
Why?
Jesus himself appeared to you and said, you want war. He also appeared to you and said, no time to talk Allah. And he appeared to you and said, tell the vision, you shall not need the mark.
When did these appearances occur? I don't remember them.
I'm not going to play silly, childish war games with you about this.
What are you going to do then?
If you want to play fraud and I'm going to watch you lose everything you have. That's what I'm going to do. And I mean everything.
Okay, and how you're going to watch everything being lost? What does that mean? Can you just expand?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to gather 144,000 Jewish children who say bad boom and boom, mark of the 10, the black, death, war, yavol, and hell. They're prophets.
All right.
They do not use TV.
All right.
I'm going to gather them and we're going to walk right over your armies.
Oh,
Okay.
Wesley, I think you have lost it, mate. And I'm really sorry
Wesley,
for you.
Wesley,
I feel really
you're
sorry
very
for you.
interesting person. I actually enjoy talking to you. Where are you from?
I am in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh, I see. Huntington, West Virginia. Wesley Curry.
Yeah.
What did you do in your life? Are you retired?
It will be one of the first cities that are bombed by nuclear bombs. And you have been shown by Jesus in visions that I am not going to be harmed. I have the dove over my head, and he is going to lift me up. I couldn't understand your question.
Do you have any children, Wesley?
No, not on earth. There are children that are in heaven from concubines that I have had in the past, but they are not on earth in the flesh.
What do you do for a living, Wesley? Are you retired or?
I am retired.
What did you do before, may I ask?
I was an exhibit designer, basically a drafter, an architectural drafter, and I was a entertainer. I was a music director with a company called the Second City in Chicago, and I was a musician, a composer.
That's nice. That's good.
And I've composed music for a couple of feature films that were presented in America.
Okay.
All right, great.
We would actually want to see that. So feature films that were presented. So are you? Did you made the music? I take it. You composed it, or?
Yes, the orchestral music. What's your name before I go further? Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking to Mahdeen.
Hi, Mahdeen.
Mahdeen, yeah. Mahdin. Yeah.
Can you hear him? Mahdin was talking. Now it's Philo. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
So what is
Mahdin.
your discussion about at this time?
All right. So we were talking about a debate that took place between two Muslims and two atheists. And we were just reviewing that debate, basically.
Right. So you were watching two guys that don't believe in God play nya against each other.
Well, that's your take. You're entitled to your take.
Very simple.
Right.
So how come? So what are you? How come you're on our stream right now? Are you not watching this? What were you doing? I thought you may have been watching us.
Right now, I am waiting. The return of God has already happened. He returned in the clouds with his angels, and I went out and performed works for him. And now I am waiting until the end of time, at which time I'm going to heaven, and at which time Jesus is going to put me back on earth in an astonishing miracle. He will put me back on earth to meet personally in the flesh every living human being on earth. Personally, without TV.
Right. Okay.
All right. Okay. Can I ask you which denomination of Judaism do you belong to? Or you,
I don't subscribe to satanic to the satanic serration of faith. Jesus is God, and as a matter of fact, anybody who denies that Jesus is God is not Jewish. There are many people that say they are Jews. They are liars. They do not believe Jesus is God, and to deny that he is God is to deny being Jewish. No matter what the propaganda, no matter what the high chairs say, that is the way it is.
right, but then the Jews don't say that the Jesus is God. Christians do.
Those that claim to be Jews these days are not Jewish. In their heart, they are all Muslims. They are Jewish only with their lips, just as those who claim to believe that Jesus is God and say they are Christian are also all Muslims at this time. The devil came down and put in the minds of everybody on earth these words: I will turn and toss you violently like a ball. Now, when did Satan put those words in all the minds on earth? He put it in the minds of all on earth on October 10, 2005. I will turn and toss you violently like a ball. Now, that was not God. That was a paralyzing force. That was a fire from heaven. That was a breathless tongue. And it was evil. And Satan did the same thing to everybody on earth, saying, don't tell the vision. Now, when did Satan, Lucifer, when did Satan say, don't tell the vision? March 31st in the year 2020. And he paralyzed when he did this. Between those two times, between October 10, 2005, March 31st, 2020, he paralyzed everybody in your beds several times without saying anything. Only a paralysis. Now, Jesus appeared to all the quote unquote Christians, saying, tell the vision. 3 times he told everybody that claims to believe Jesus is God, and Jesus said, tell the vision. Now, there are many of those that say, we're waiting on the return of Jesus. It's any day now, Jesus Christ is going to return. And they are perverting that Jesus Christ did return and appeared to all of them, and they say not. He appeared on August 25th, 2005, saying, tell the vision. On November 5th, 2005, Jesus appeared to everyone and said, tell the vision. On February 22nd, 2006, he appeared and said, tell the vision. And none of these priests or ministers or rabbis confessed or witnessed it. So they do not believe he is God in their hearts. They believe he is God only with their lips. They pray to an imaginary Jesus that is not real. But when the real Jesus appears in the Holy Spirit, they deny he is God. So Jesus appeared again and said, tell the vision, and you shall not need the mark. And what mark did he mean? He meant the Botch of Egypt, the Omni, the Emerald, the $32,523 that comes with the Omni bar. And the itch and the scab will also be given to those that take that Omni. A mark, a branded UPC barcode. That's what mark Jesus Christ meant when he said,
Wesley, I know you're going into a long speech now. We hate to cut
sorry,
you off.
I agree.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'll be quiet for a bit.
No, it's fine.
When I hear someone talk on and on and on, I'm going, when is this guy going to stop? I agree with you 100%.
I understand. We just wanted to say, because it's getting late over here, and we do like listening to you. It's interesting. So maybe in the next stream, you may want to come on, and we can talk to you about this. It's unfortunate you're coming right at the end when we were about to sign off, but we thought we'll take you on. But this was interesting. It was a friendly chat, and maybe in the future, if you want to come on, we'll add you at the beginning or at some point. Then we can have a conversation.
Very good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And thank you for this. Seriously, I I often have heard people and they start talking on, and it seems as there is no communication. It's just blah blah blah, and that's good of you to pull the reins back a little bit. Didn't hurt a bit.
That's fine. Anyway, Wesley, we'll probably have to say bye to you now, and we will probably go off as well. So
okay, thanks
for joining us. Next time as well, come along.
All right, Wesley. Yes,
right.
yeah. Thanks for joining. Talk to you in the next stream, right?
Thank you.
Come a little bit early if you can, right?
Okay, is this a weekly thing for you?
We are not regular about it, but yeah, unfortunately, we're not regular about it. So we tend to, if you want, you can just subscribe and then get the notification whenever our stream is, right? Usually we tend to put notification like 10 hours before we go live or something like that. So you should be having enough time to get a notification, right?
Thank you. I'll try to make notes so that I don't sound like a rambling idiot for you.
All right, not a problem. Anytime you can drop by and have a conversation. So we'll have a cordial conversation. Sure, right?
Okay, I'll sign off. Goodbye.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Wesley.
Bye.
Oh, all right, Callie, you have been quiet for a while. So go on and we'll close the stream. Maybe just...
I don't want to go on and on.
30 second summary or whatever, like 10 second, 20 second, whatever you want to, and then we'll shut down the stream.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did cover in fact, almost all of the arguments that Hijab raised. I think we demolished, we can, without even boasting, we can say that it was quite clearly, a complete rebuttal of all of his arguments. We dealt with the inimitability argument, the argument from prophecy, and then the rebuttals that he was trying to give to Aaron Fasser. And I think it was a good stream. I look forward to this, to reviewing Hamza's argument and his counter arguments.
All right, Mahadin, you want to add something to?
Yeah, I think we've done what we needed to do in this, and there's much more to be said about everything that he said, but I think we've done most of it. Everything that we've said is enough to debunk his case. I just look forward to now what Hamza is going to say, what Oppenheimer is going to say, and I actually want to see a discussion between the two. But I hear that the performance wasn't very good, or at least according to Aaron Fezer, that the Islamic side wasn't really there to have an open discussion. They were just grandstanding, generating propaganda for their clicks. So unfortunately, the level of debate was probably poor. And that's the only regret that I have, even before going there. It would be nice to have them, I would like to see watch them talk without an audience, to see how they talk behind, on a table, without anybody watching. So just Hamza and Hijab talking to these two atheists. That would be more interesting to me than this sort of theater. But yeah, that's it, I guess.
Right, I agree to both of you, and then it'll be interesting to see the next interlocutors posing their arguments, opening statements. And one more thing that I noticed, and I'm pretty sure you guys noticed as well, was the crowd was like heavily tilted towards one side, and it was really. I actually messaged Aaron about this, that I realized that they probably were more tilted towards the grandstand kind of audience, rather than for some really deep philosophical ideas, listening for some really deep philosophical ideas. So yeah. Anyway, that's about it. I think we're going to close the stream. Thank you, everyone. And one thing I would say, I was thinking that Mahadin was going to handle this stream, but eventually something happened and I took the driver's seat. But
I think you're used to it. That's why.
I think that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter.
Plus you're
The stream was pretty
navigating.
good.
Yeah, you're
Sorry?
navigating the screens, you know, and that's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
why.
I think that's the reason. I think we just switched over time and without realizing. I think I don't know if you realized or not. I didn't realize it pretty much, right? But anyways, anybody who's listening to this stream as of now or is gonna listen to it, please, 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 please subscribe. Share and just press the notification bell and comment, please. If you can comment, each and every comment is really helpful, and at least it helps the YouTube algorithm to pick it up and keep it in the home pages and stuff like that, I think. So if you comment whatever you have, good, bad, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just comment on whatever you think about this stream. So that's about it. Thank you very much, Kelly, Mahaden.